And before we begin, I will ask the Reverend Hugh Stewart to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Bí gras for agus ulebianid a sin son gat a bhálagar in bháseo, son gach cain ha agad orn, agus son yn gyrragu ontach a hasbyn y gain, tyd y michi as y crias, agus bar glor for a chwrgiaim sy'n hwyl sio, son sawyr y gain dy graag agus dy gras gysiori, tri o berchrioch ni sy'n a chrawn lleisi, bianig ha sy'n yw gwydau chomedi a ha arna sio, agus yn hwrle, a ha nis yw'r torsiochig, y torsgwyd tank son gach dynnu a ha gael comparst eint, agus y gwydau gymryd sy'n gan trorachig, let y gleichgus fein, gymryd y gambianachig an nynnu dy nefi ans yn hirna iasa, cynchyd y chwaen weg ans na skoltjen, y torsgwyd bwyachus yn son, agus son y teacher mar yng nghedna, agus y gwydau gymryd y gambianachig mar yng nghedna an het fein, agus y cynch y cwdioch le bwyachus, et y chyrrafasioch a nisio ti'n go crioch ha twydys opyd, a har y fi giannu har ymydoch bliorna, y gwyod y fianoch gyr ynys, agus gach ni ein ar son ogri ar nielan sias tron y blion y galaf. Chwyd y carasyn y gwyod, gwrni yn nis gymryd y trorach y cianar dy chomedi, agus gach bawl, an y dylun ffein, i'r sgach rias. Amen.
Okay, Chair, just particularly for the new members, if you require translation facilities, there are headphones at the back of the chamber. You just plug the headphone into the mic. There's an option there that says floor, and if you press that a couple of times, it says 2GA. That gives you the translation feed. Now, I'm conscious we do have some members joining us through Teams. At the moment, we don't have a facility to provide translation through Teams, but just to assure members, we are looking at options for this. We think we have identified a potential solution which will allow a translation to be provided through the Teams to those joining remotely. We do need to test this, and we're planning to do that tomorrow at Comity Gaelic, and if it is successful, we'll email members with the options for getting a translation service on Microsoft Teams. So if you just indulge us for a few more days, hopefully we will have a solution to this, and we can have fully bilingual meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Just to say that the meeting is now being recorded, so the meeting is now live, so just to make you all aware. So you will all be well versed on the conduct of the meeting, but I will remind you of the following. If you are a member of the committee attending remotely, please leave your camera on and your microphone off. Officers, please leave both off unless you are called to speak to a report or answer a question. A reminder to those members in the chamber of the queuing system. If you want to ask a question, please leave your mic on in case you wish to come back on a response. Committee members will be given priority. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the caller's website following the meeting. Items 6, 16 and 23 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting, and prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officer and members will be asked to leave the meeting. I am ruling items 17, 22 and 23 as urgent to allow the matters to be considered prior to the next meeting. In addition, Mr. Angus McLennan will make reference to an item on the impact of ESCOL, and an additional appendix has been included at item 10. Thank you. So I'll just move on now to the good news stories. So Castle Bay School, Katrina O'Carroll, new S5, who this season combined her National 5 studies with trips to Glasgow at weekends to train and play for the Celtic under-16 squad, is looking forward to next season. Katrina will be training with the Celtic under-19 squad. She is also currently training with the Western Isles women's squad in preparation for the 2023 International Island Games, which are being held in Guernsey. Alana McNeil, P6, is modelling for Mango, amongst other high street names. You can see I've heard of Mango. Alana has made several trips to Barcelona to shoot and is currently being filmed for a documentary by BBC Alba. Scottish Education Awards 2022. Dr. Sarah McKinnon was nominated as a finalist in the Teacher of the Year category. Fundraising Ceilidh. A community event with talented school musicians was enjoyed by many on Friday the 10th of June. Angus Brendan was compared at the show. Crown Estate funding. Castle-based School Eco Group has been awarded £8,000 for delivery of their Harvest Festival project in September 2022. Lochda School. Following a number of preparatory meetings with Katie Logic at Children's Parliament, Clarina Fisher and Sam Shepherd, Skolna Lochda, participated in an important meeting with the Permanent Secretary and Executive Team at the Scottish Government on the 14th of June. Kate Cudlier, Programme Manager, Children's Parliament, reported that Sam led the reflection exercise with the Director Generals with aplomb and was wonderful in checking he got people's names right. Runa, Children's Parliament Head of Programme, stated that both Sam and Clara spoke with great insight into the importance of mental health and well-being for children in Scotland. Their work is not over yet, though as they will be involved with the Children's Parliament during their first year at Scoil Linaclit too, when they will attend a session of the Scottish Cabinet. That's quite interesting. Stornoway Primary School. Stornoway Primary began their journey to becoming a rights-respecting school at the beginning of this session. They have now achieved the Bronze Award and are working towards the Silver Award. The Pupil Steering Committee held their first UNICEF Day for Change, where just over £1,500 was raised for the Ukraine appeal. Stornoway Primary School and Nursery have been developing a whole school approach to nurture, where the development of positive relationships is key to supporting the health and well-being of all children. Following on from this, a nurture classroom is being established. Stornoway Primary Gaelic Medium 7 pupils participated in GLIB and Chuach. The pupils gave a 3-minute presentation about a subject of their choice. The pupils were asked questions about their topic. Hetty Nailey came third with her presentation about birds. All Stornoway Primary Gaelic Medium 5 to 7 pupils took part in Jibesh Beck through Eascol. This competition involved Gaelic Medium schools from all over Scotland. GM5, 6 and GM7 classes made it through to the final. Matthew Stewart and Mia Engelbretson came in first place, and Michael Lang and Faith Mackay came second place in their categories. Alistair Allen, MSP, came to Stornoway Primary School to issue Callanish Award certificates to 130 of our pupils for volunteering activities in the local community. Nicholson Institute. Music. Pupils from the Lewis and Harris Youth Concert Band and Lewis and Harris Youth Pipe Band had a very successful trip to Lockerbie High School and the Scottish Parliament. This arose after links made during lockdown. MSP Allen also showed the pupils around the Parliament. In April, 8 girls from the Nicholson Institute travelled to Edinburgh to be part of the Girls' National Choir of Scotland. The girls passed a difficult audition in January to be part of the National Choir and were great musical ambassadors for the island. The school and their local NYCOS choir. After spending a week boarding at Murchison Castle School in Edinburgh, they performed their flagship concert to a full house at Glasgow's Royal Concert Hall on September the 16th of April. PE. The Nicholson Institute had outstanding success at the Scottish School Athletics Championships this month. 13 pupils represented the school at the Scottish Schools Track and Field Championships at Grangemouth Stadium, Falkirk. Pupils must attain the qualifying standards for eligibility to compete. The team all performed extremely well against the best athletes from across the country, reaching 10 finals, producing 9 personal bests and 4 season best performances, as well as bringing home 3 prestigious SSAA medals. Rachel Murray won A girls 800 meters bronze. Abby Stewart won C girls 800 meters silver, and Ewan Amos won C boys high jump gold. Dance. Congratulations were extended to Mias Morrison and Mary McLean, who were selected to represent Team Scotland in the World Dance Championships in Orlando, Florida. They performed incredibly well and along with their teammates were awarded bronze, an outstanding achievement. Gaelic. A group of Gaelic pupils are going to Cluan Naad Scohen on Wednesday in Dingwall. This is a football tournament for secondary age pupils organised by Gnach. There was a huge turnout for trials and the final squad is made up of boys and girls from S1 and S2. Pupils continue to take part in Gaelic writing competitions both nationally and locally with class and the Gaelic Book Trust 50-word competitions. Congratulations to Beth MacDonald, Holly Murphy and Rona McLean who enjoyed success with 50 Fachan Skol Michflir. Skolnalock. Skolnalock achieved third place in the national Clonacloniach football competition in Inverness for Gaelic medium primary pupils. Ryan MacDonald from the school was awarded a special prize for spoken Gaelic at the competition. Olivia's journey. School, NHS and Action for Children staff with families and friends walked from Skolnaruba to Skolnalock on Saturday in memory of Olivia MacLeod, who was a pupil at both schools. The walk raised money for Glasgow Children's Hospital charity and at least £10,000 is expected to be raised. Thanks, that's pretty impressive stuff that our young people are doing throughout the islands. It's amazing actually. So we'll move on to the part of the minutes. The first item is the minutes of the meeting of the 1st of February 2022 and it's for noting for approval. Approval. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of February 2022 for approval. Okay, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting of the 17th of May 2022 for approval. I'll take it that's an approval then. Declaration of interests. Item 4. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members express why they are declaring an interest in the items concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by the raised hand function. Please ensure the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated. Item 5. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, but can I declare an interest in item number 16 as a director of Uruguay?
Okay, thanks. Got that right. Any other item? Any other declarations? No. Right. So item 5. So performance management. Item 5. The report provides an overview of the Education, Skills and Children's Services Department business plan progress and related performance for quarter 4 year end 21-22. Neil MacLeod will speak to the report. Okay, sorry. William MacDonald will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thank you.
Just I'll go through the report briefly and highlight a few points and then happy to take any questions. I think this is a report that we'll bring to you on a quarterly basis, just showing the work of the department as a whole. And the last 2 or 3 years is difficult to get trends and patterns in terms of education statistics. And the same is true of finance because of spend and waiting. So it's slightly different, but happy to take questions and officers are here to answer any specific questions and details. So in terms of the work we're doing, the specific detail is in section 6 and we'll come to that in a minute. And just we've provided links for you on a number of different items that you can read the actual detail of the report, and you see that in 2.5 in the service business plan progress and an interplan. There's a lot of detail there that isn't included in this report. And over the page as well, 5.1 gives you the background and refers you to the local improvement plan. And we also work in terms of what we're doing. We've got the UN global goals and the national performance framework. So all these are linked in the report. I won't go through the detail at the moment, but we can come back to it in terms if people have got any specific questions. Now, the detail of the report is in 6.1, and the Children's Services Plan, the Integrated Children's Services Plan, really drives the work that's being done through that section department. And as you can see in 6.2, there are challenges locally with antisocial behaviour incidents, and there's a working group been put in place to deal with these. And you can also see that the first 2 children have arrived under the Unaccompanied Asylum Seeking Children programme. Now, in terms of the education, skills and children's services, there's a number of sections in that department between management information, IT, finance and staffing, and we've also got catering and cleaning, library services and catering and community work. And we've got a separate report coming up on the library services later in the agenda. Under 6.9, you'll see primary schools in terms of catering, etc. And online enrolment's been completed for P1, S1 and early years. And I think we're sitting about 58% in terms of children enrolling in Gaelic medium for next session, which is up considerably on last year. But again, the pandemic effect had a lot to do with the downturn in enrolments last year. Now, in terms of schools and community learning, there's a bit of detail there of the work that we're doing to address some of the challenges, and we're working closely with Orkney and Shetland in terms of collaborative improvement, in terms of looking what we're doing in the senior phase in secondary. And at the end, Donald and Mary Claire are here to take specific questions in terms of school improvement work. And in section 7 there, we've got the risk management in terms of work that we're doing and in terms of placements, etc. But rather than numbers are very small, so we could identify individuals, but we'll take any specific questions at the end. And in terms of number 8 there, the financial performance, it looks as if we've got underspend, but there's a lot of money waiting to be spent, just that we're waiting for orders, etc. But happy to take questions on any of the specifics in terms of the finance, and officers will answer. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Liam? Anybody on screen or no? Okay. Okay, fair enough. Right.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee. The Director made reference to the antisocial behaviour, the recent antisocial behaviour that's been taking place and blighted the community over the last number of months. And I welcome the fact that his working group has been set up. I brought this attention some months ago, some of the ways that other countries are trying to address this issue in their communities by trying to restore some order and trying to make a positive impact on young people and trying to address these deep-seated issues that they have to try and bring some calm and peace to the communities that they live in and society that they're trying to live in. So I'm wondering if we could maybe have a seminar, or the working group could perhaps set up some sort of seminar to look at some examples of how we could address this problem going forward.
I'll switch one. Callum, can you just put your mic off a sec, please, so we can, yeah, I'll get to you next.
Happy to take that suggestion on board. Mr. Libby and Mr. MacLeod have been involved in meetings locally, and I'm sure they'll be happy to take that forward. And I think also the work that we do in this area, I know that maybe Claire Ferguson's looking at the early years, because I think a lot of the seeds are sown. We see more and more challenging behaviour at early stages in our early years and primary school, if I'm being honest. And if we can get to the root of these problems, I think it'll help us all and address it, hopefully, before they come to secondary.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if there's a kind of a citizenship kind of programme as part of the curriculum in our schools, but perhaps that could be something that could be considered to bring to the attention of our young people at a very early stage their responsibility as citizens and their responsibility to the society they're growing up in. I think that would be worthwhile including in any future developments.
Successful citizens is one of the pillars for Curriculum for Excellence, and absolutely agree. And there are programs that we can follow, and we'll take that up as a team and keep you informed.
Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. Just two questions on it with regards to 8.1, which you've semi-clarified, and that's the underspends. You know, when you see an underspend of early years at 300 and I got it right, 318,000, and then particular ASN psychology at 248. You've sort of said that you're waiting for invoices. It's a fair amount of invoices to have 500,000 between the two. Could you give any sort of enlightenment on that one? First of all, I've got a second question as well relating to 10.1.
Okay, if there's specific detail, I think Ms MacLeod is here at the moment as well, and any detail, I don't know if Dalton Mary Clare in terms of early years at ASN have any further information.
Hi, we did have an underspend in early years. It was mainly around staffing, and I think part of that was COVID related. We had a bit of a delay in recruiting to vacant posts. ASN was a similar position, and we did have additional government funding that came in through the year. So that's all contributed to the position, but it's a fairly small percentage of the overall budget. And a lot of the underspend, it's we are waiting for invoices to come in, but some of it relates to specific carry forwards. We've had grant funding that we do have to carry forward to the next year. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, partially it does. The thing is this, that as I've been listening to teachers and to schools, as you have yourself, is that the question of ASN in particular always raises its head, especially over the COVID time. And if there's anything that I would have looked for, it would be an overspend rather than an underspend in that budget. So that's the peculiarity I'm talking about. The second one is in 10.1. It says there that the Scottish Government provided additional funding. Can you determine how much educational funding that was and how many full-time teachers as a consequence of that? That's good news, obviously. It's good news to see additional staffing as well.
It was we had 6 additional staff last year, and they'll be staying on in our schools. And again, this year, they're giving us, I think it's 3 additional members of staff. And we've got a recruitment process in place just now to make more posts permanent. So adverts are out and the ring fence to people who have been posts for a number of years. But again, Dalton Mary Clare might have more specific detail if they wish to add anything to that.
That's me, sorry, first. Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to respond and give a little more detail on some of these points. And firstly, in terms of the ASN underspend and Councillor McLean's first question, it has been rightly identified significantly to do with recruitment issues. The funding ultimately that's been provided, particularly through COVID-19 support and in recruitment for the commitment from the government and the 100 days pledges, is ring-fenced and protected to certain purposes, and it's not within our gift to redetermine that. And we have had some significant successes in recruitment within ASN, should I say, but also we've had a number of cases where recruitment has not been successful, and we've advertised several times for posts that we've not been able yet to recruit to, and that's contributed to some of that underspend. And in terms of the additional teaching posts, we have been able to secure 6 additional posts on a permanent basis using funding from Scottish Government for the year ahead. And as the Director has identified, we're looking to recruit more and have currently released 5 posts on a permanent basis for recruitment in English medium. And I've also been recruiting in Gaelic medium this term. So we are investing in and trying to grow our staff.
Just, Councillor McLean, one of the challenges we've actually at the moment, there's a lot of short-term funding. I think we've got about 30 different funding streams that are ring-fenced to specific, and we have to report on each of these to Scottish Government. So although the money appears in the pot, a lot of it is ring-fenced, and we don't have any scope in terms of how we spend it. It's got to be specific for that pot. For instance, there's mental health money, etc., etc. So it's all ring fenced. So the pot looks great, but as Don was saying, a lot of it is ring fenced.
I'll just, if you was wait on there, Ray, please. I'll just bring Ranald in because Ranald's been waiting quite a while, so I'll bring you in after. Okay, Ranald.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. A question for the Director referring to 10.2. I see here that it says the Scottish Government is looking to establish a national digital school. Can I ask the Director two questions? The first one is, how will this manifest itself for us here in the islands? Secondly, has the Scottish Government indicated to the Director as to what percentage of the schooling population within Scotland will be under this auspices at any one time?
Okay, at the moment they're setting up a new learning board, and the actual detail of that hasn't manifested itself as yet. We're waiting for the government basically to lead on this, so we're still waiting as to how that will actually evolve. And in terms of percentage of schooling, I think it depends just on individuals, what subjects, etc. they seek, but Scottish Government have said that young people can study anytime, any place. So the availability will be there, but the uptake remains unknown, is my honest answer.
Are you happy with that, Ranald? Do you want to come back?
One follow-up question, Chair. And depending on uptake, would that reflect on funding being distributed to the various local authority areas in Scotland?
Again, funding mechanism are still to be worked out. At the moment, government have been very generous in terms of the offer that we're making. The offer is wide-ranging through DYW, etc., and it's in the region of 2 million at the moment per annum for us. And that will continue until we have further detail of how the National Digital School will develop and evolve.
Thank you, Chair.
Cheers, thanks. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Ray McKenzie, Stornoway South. Yeah, going back to what Councillor Crichton brought up, and I think this is, it probably affects my particular area more than anywhere else, but there's no doubt that the increase in youth offending, although it probably represents a very small number, is happening. And I think that what Councillor Crichton raised there should be followed up. I don't think there was any conclusion as to what action should be said. I mean, should be taken. I think there was mention of a seminar or something to that effect, but are we going ahead with this? It's a serious problem, and it'll probably come up again this week under other committees, but it'd be good to know where we're going with this.
We're happy to go ahead with the seminar, but maybe it'd be useful to have some input from Mr. Libby, who's been involved in conversations.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Chair. Members, this is a very important issue. As Willie mentioned, Donald and I attended a community meeting a fortnight ago thereabouts, and we have a follow-up meeting this Thursday evening. What I would say, this requires a whole family and a whole community approach. We have to remind ourselves that, I suppose, in the region of 80% of the young people involved in antisocial behaviours and youth offending do come from challenging family backgrounds. And when you look at the background, you can often understand the behaviours. And that's why we do need a whole family and a whole community approach to this. as Councillor Crichton mentioned earlier, there are interventions, proven effective interventions, such as whole systems approaches, restorative justice, which I'm a big advocate myself of. All this has to be done in partnership with the schools, youth clubs, other community groups. So I'm very much in favour of a seminar that we may host, but I would like to think we could include partnership agencies in that, such as Action for Children. I think Police Scotland clearly have a remit in this also, in terms of not only intervening where such behaviours exist, but also there's a preventative framework to this as well we need to keep a lens on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. And
So is that yes, we will organise a seminar in the near future. Yeah. Thank you.
okay, thanks. Councillor Angus Morrison, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but just to pick up on the point with the director about placements and probationers. I take it we're not going to be in the same situation we were last year, where local probationers were displaced by students coming in from mainland placements. And just to clarify again, did I pick up that all last year's placements are going to be in full-time employment in schools this coming term?
To the best of my knowledge, the staffing has been set for next session, and I haven't heard anything from anyone who's got any concern regarding their employment for next session. I know that that there's interviews to take place very soon, so I suppose it depends on successful candidates, and we'll see what happens. I don't know if Donald Mary Clare have anything additional.
Just to add, yes, Willie, that the number of the probationers actually are going back to mainland placements as well. So we're not entirely sure. There's still a few, as Mr. McDonald said, there's still a few outstanding posts to be filled. So they're not. I haven't got the full detail really in terms of that yet.
Yeah, just if I could come back again, one supplementary on that. It wasn't actually the mainland placements coming here I was referring to, but the local placements that were on. You know, the directors are aware I had a lot of dialogue with them on this last year. I wouldn't want our local probationers to be put out of employment due to the scheme of the government putting in mainland placements and paying for them to come here when our local people are struggling. Are we in the same situation again this year, Director, or are we? You know, this is really what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. Are we going to end up with local placements displaced due to the mainland placements coming in?
Okay. I don't know of any at the moment that are being displaced as a consequence of people coming in. See, one of the challenges for us, and it's something that we must improve, is our communication with UHI, and I'm not giving blame or apportioning blame to anyone, but they interview and accept students that we're not aware of in our system. So it's something that we need to work at and refine, because we definitely need more, for instance, in terms of Gaelic, etc. So sometimes they're taking that intake in terms of English is more than we can actually place. And then the government last year obviously had the 500 extra teachers that they placed in authorities as well. And they didn't come to us before placing, or the people in Aberdeenshire, for instance. So communication, and this is a national challenge for local authorities. I say, for instance, I know that Borders asked for 9 English teachers. The next session they got none, and the probation placement, and Renfrewshire asked for 40 and they got 76. So there's a massive issue nationally in placing probationers, and the communication with local authorities is definitely lacking, because we're not in the loop until we get our probationers, and that comes from Edinburgh. We can ask, and we have asked this year for probationers in certain subjects. We haven't got them, and they've been sent elsewhere where they might not necessarily have been needed. But a lot of young people want to stay in the Central Belt, and that's a challenge for us in our secondary. So I hope that semi-answers your questions. We want to be more at the table when these discussions are being had, so that we're better informed.
Yeah, just to come back in again on that, thanks, Director. But I don't think we're any further forward than when I had this discussion a year ago.
that concerns me a wee bit. And the second question, second answer I would ask is, the placements that we had locally last year, are they actually now going to be kept on in placements full time in our own education system here? I still think it's a wrong system where people are put in from the mainland into teaching posts here, and we've got probationer, we've got our own people who have gone through training, can't get a job in our own local schools, and they've been forced off island. If I don't think that system is right, and I would hope we would have made some ground from where we were a year ago, but obviously not. But on the actual placements that we did have, it would be good to know, are they actually all going to be kept in employment or not? Maybe if it can't be answered to me just now, I'd like to answer it with maybe committee.
I'll follow up on that and I'll get an answer to you.
Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you, Chair. The Director mentioned in his report the joint work with Orkney and Shetland, and I think we have so much in common with the schools and the authorities. I'm really pleased to hear that this work is going ahead. I had a bit of joint work with the two main secondary schools in Orkney and Shetland myself over the last few years, and I think it was extremely beneficial. I just wondered what the next stage would be in that work.
I think the next stage, Donald MacLeod is going to be part of the group taking that work forward. And there's a meeting in the next couple of days, Donald, just to agree on the next steps, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Director Chair. We have completed recently a collaborative self-evaluation exercise within the senior phase with Orkney and Shetland colleagues, alongside colleagues from ADIS Scotland and from Education Scotland. And that concluded approximately a fortnight ago and involved all the schools in delivery of senior phase across the three island groups. It was a very productive exercise and a lot of collaboration has been born out of it. We have a meeting on Wednesday of this week that will take the three officers together from the three island authorities to collate together the feedback that we received from the various different seminars and activities that took place in that exercise, and that feedback will then be collated together into an action plan for collaborative working across the three island authorities, initially focusing on the senior phase, but also moving on more widely from that. And that'll be the initial next step.
Thanks, Donald. Councillor Norman MacDonald, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Norman MacDonald, Skira Row. Can I ask if we're moving any further forward on an issue that we had in the last term, whereby within several of our wards we had issues with teachers who were coming to us complaining about the inability of the Cumla to provide them with permanent working contracts. Surely we should be, at least by the end of this term, in a position where we're able to offer anybody who's got 2 to 3 years placement and service with the Cumla in a particular school employed by us on a permanent contract, and not have a situation where teachers are still, after many and several years working with the Cumla, still wondering if they're going to get a permanent contract. I would like to think that as a responsible employer, we don't have anybody still out in a limb after 3-5 years working with the Cumla.
There's a working group ongoing at the moment, and there's still several areas to be agreed with LNC over this. But I mentioned earlier, there's a number of interviews taking place in the next couple of weeks where a number of people who have been on temporary or 0.2 permanent contracts will have the opportunity to, there's a number of jobs and they will be in permanent contracts successful, but there's still some work to be done for some. And I don't know if Donald and Mary Claire want to give more detail in terms of the group, of the working group.
Yes, thank you, Director. We have established a working group under the banner of the LNCT to work in collaboration between the employer side and the employee side to negotiate out a new code of practice on the use of temporary contracts, which includes clauses in relation to moves to permanency. There hasn't been agreement within that forum yet in terms of certain clauses that we're not in agreement with the union representation on in terms of that, and in respect particularly of our local island context. These negotiations do continue, and we have a commitment with LNCT to have a resolution and an agreement in place ahead of the 2023 staffing exercise. In addition to that, we have ring-fenced released and ring-fenced 5 posts for permanent appointment this year, specifically to address the moves towards permanency that people have requested. So previously and in previous years, these posts would not likely have been released. We have been taking on board feedback from employees and others to try and make sure that where we have the scope at all to move towards permanent appointment, we will do that. There are more people with the right to permanency than there are posts, so there has to be a recruitment exercise to undertake that. But there are 5 posts, and these close to applications today and will be recruited to before the summer to make sure that these people have a permanency of employment ahead of August.
Thanks very much for that, William and Donald. Yeah, I think it's important for our own development as a community that our teaching posts are made permanent for those who wish to settle here and have some degree of stability. Thanks very much for your updates.
Thanks, Noy. Councillor Kenneth McLean, please.
It's just to follow on from what was being discussed there. Has there been anything put in place to streamline this in the future so there aren't a number of places sort of a number of teachers without having a permanent contract in place for years at a time? Because wouldn't this have a knock-on effect on recruitment if as a local council we're known not to give decent contracts, so to speak? Because I would be hesitant to uproot my life in the mainland, for example, to move out here and not have a permanent contract. It seems like a big commitment, and that might just have a negative effect on recruitment in general.
I'm not sure if this will answer the question from the member in full, but the issues where we have this is linked to where we ultimately are carrying an over formula provision of staffing. It's not related to where we have issues of recruitment or shortage. A significant aspect of this relates to English medium primary education, and that is reflected in 2 key drivers at the moment. The first one is an important policy position for the Comhairle, which is our Gaelic first policy and our drive towards further and stronger uptake of Gaelic medium education. And as a result of that, we have greater recruitment needs in Gaelic medium education and the potential building up of a surplus of permanent staff in English medium beyond the classes that we have for them. And secondly, as the director has already pointed out, we have a job of work to do with our training partners at UHI and other initial teacher education institutes who continue to train English medium primary teachers beyond the requirements of local authorities to recruit to them. So these issues around permanency of contracts are not related to any staffing shortages or areas where we haven't been able to entice staff from the mainland. It's more to do with making sure that we have a responsive staff pool to the fluctuating and changing numbers of roles in our different schools in any one year. And that's a complex staffing exercise that usually begins from round about late January, early February when school enrolments commence, and then carries on throughout the remainder of the academic session through to the end of term, and brings in retirements, resignations, recruitment, probationers, requests for transfers, requests for permanency. There are 9 or 10 different factors that are taken together across that 3 to 4 month period that determine the staffing needs of individual schools, and it's a complex matrix of decision making that's required. So I would reassure the member that that's not relating to any issues of recruitment shortage.
Okay, right. Is everyone happy to agree the recommendation at 3-1? Thank you. Item 6, we're taking in private, so we'll move on to item 7, educational provision, education reform. This report provides details on the education reform agenda and its possible implication for the Comhairle. William McDonald will speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll just speak very briefly. Obviously, the new report came out last year, putting learners at the centre towards a future vision for Scottish education. This is just a first step in what's going to take a few years to come to fruition. I think working groups have been established as we speak, and a national conversation or a national debate has just been announced. And again, flesh will be put on the bones in terms of national debate as we move forward. And also in tandem with this, I think the new report, one of the things we'll have to look at as an authority as we move forward is that teachers' class contact will be reduced by 90 minutes each week. So that'll have major financial implications, it'll have major staffing implications for us. And we also have referred to digital learning already. This needs to be clarified at national level what the expectation is in terms of teaching staff, because it will have consequences for us if we're not able to proceed with some of the plans that we have in terms of young people's entitlements. And I referred in the report as well to the UNCRC, the rights of the young person to an education that meets their needs and personality, etc. So that will be something that will evolve. We await to see what the successor of SQA will be, and there's big debate about the end of course high stakes examination, whether we'll move away from that, but that will be part of the debate. Education Scotland or a new national education agency will be established, and linked to that will be the education framework. So there's a lot of talking to be done, and you'll see in terms of the detail there. At the moment, I think 50% of young people in Scotland say that they're satisfied with the education provision that they're getting, but we would have to dig down and see what the reasons for that are. And we will do some work in our own schools to see what the satisfaction of young people with the offer is. And it'll link to the Tri-Island work we're doing just to see how we're meeting the needs of young people. So young people are saying that the curriculum limits us in developing our uniqueness, our talents and our abilities. But that's true of some. Some are very happy with the curriculum. So it's just to find a curriculum that meets the needs of all. So there's quite a bit of detail here. I think 6.3 as well, he mentioned inconsistent approach to CFE results in an inequity of offer. So we're looking at equity of provision, whether they're young persons in Castlebay or in the Nicholson Institute. And because of economies of scale, that is quite a challenge for us to do. And 6.10, I've mentioned the reduction of 90 minutes a week for teaching staff. So major implications for local authorities. And this is the start of a debate. And I think we could, for the next 4 or 5 years, it could take 4 or 5 years before the full implications of MUIR will be seen in schools. So we're going on with a wee bit of uncertainty, challenging times for the teaching profession. I acknowledge that. And I think, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Norrie, is that a legacy hand or do you have a question there at all?
Apologies, legacy hand.
Does anyone have any questions they want to ask the director? Councillor Murray, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, more an observation. The outside the Nicholson Institute, the clock tower sits, and the building attached to the clock tower was, I believe, built the same year as the Scottish Examination Board was established. And there have been more changes, I would say, in the Nicholson Institute than there have been in the exam system. So what was, really a Victorian system of exams and end of high stakes, end of course exam. There have been changes over the years, of course, but basically what we have is a system of examinations which might suit some people, but certainly doesn't suit all people. And I was doing some work last year with some colleagues from mainland schools on this topic about when we reform the SQA, we should be reforming exams as well. It shouldn't just be about a body changing and people's roles changing. We really need root and branch reform of the exam system. And one example a colleague of mine from Fife used was, young people around the same time as they're sitting their Highers or advanced Highers may go online and sit driving test theory. Why cannot, say, literacy and numeracy particularly be tested rather than in May or June when people are ready? And there should be basic tests which could be done online in these particular areas. So I think whatever contributions we should be making as an authority to the process, we should be insisting that we're seeing real change and not just shifting the deck chairs. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you've got to say. And I think the curriculum will move. Knowledge will still be important, but I think a skills-based curriculum will appear more and more. So you're absolutely right. A root and branch review is required.
Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor McLean. Just switch you on. Let me start Callum, please, first here. Oh, if you switch your mic off, please, Angus. Switch it on again, Angus. That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Murray has said there. Going back about 20 or 30 years, we had a system in this island which was up. People are shouting for now. We were, how can I say, before the times, after the times. But we had the two systems. We had a school, the Nicholson Institute, which was mainly academic, and we had Castle School, which was not so academic, but yet catered for both. And I think that maybe there's a way forward in some form of duality happening in education, because it needs to happen. Because you cannot have a system that's geared to what it is at the moment, which is academic, real academic. And I hope that I've read a bit of the report here, a new report, and it's yet another report. And I hope it's about we're coming to the end of it, and we come to something after a report. But there is actually very good stuff in it, and because the emphasis is on and what he calls here an enhanced focus on ensuring high quality learning and teaching. And the focus seems to be on the person, the teacher as well, in particular. They're looking at the increased empowerment. He talks about an autonomy to schools and practitioners. We have moved away from that over the past years. And there was from the top down approach rather than a bottom up. And that was to the detriment of many in education. We've also got a problem in education, and we've had this in the LNCT for the last 2 to 3 years, is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is bogging down teachers. And I know that because my own family are involved in teaching at the moment, and I know it for a fact. And I hear it every day. I ask some teachers, has this alleviated your bureaucracy? Not necessarily. We're still bogged down with assessments in particular. It's killing the as a matter of fact, I was speaking to a teacher just last week, and she's thinking of just packing it in because of the amount of bureaucracy. But the emphasis that I see in the Muir report, as I said before, is the focus on the teacher and the learner. And that means bodies. It does not mean, and I know I'm talking in front of the advocate of eSchool in front of me here, but it doesn't mean that we should replace teachers. We should make every effort to ensure that we've got bodies in front of pupils. And that is fundamental. And I see that in the Muir report time and time again as I read it. He talks about that continually. So I think that's maybe the other thing that he does talk about is the mental issues regarding after the 2 years of COVID. And that brings me on, it's a long way to get to a question, isn't it? But it brings me on to the fact of that we are coming to a stage now with the end of COVID, and we're picking up what COVID has left. And what it is are we in a position to ensure that we have the resources with us, even presently, to ensure that the mental issues with pupils, children, and adults as well is that we're coping with it.
In terms of the mental health issues, obviously, I've referred to it in a previous report. We do have counsellors in schools now, and young people are still quite clear they would rather a neutral venue for counselling. And referrals, I think, are all being made, and we'll have a report from Counselling and Family Mediation very soon. And we've got the COOTH which is the online support that's being accessed by a lot of young people and reported on very favourably. But there are challenges out there. We will continue to monitor young people's and staff's mental health, and Mary Claire leads on that work for us. And I think in terms of your point about Muir, the learner at the centre, the learner absolutely at the centre, and you're absolutely right. And I think Councillor Murray referred to at a previous meeting about the Nicholson Institute does provide courses for academic and vocational. I think that's the way to go. And one of the challenges for us all and for yourselves over the next 5 years is a reducing budget in terms of more and more is expected in terms of delivery. Budgets are decreasing. And I think you'll also see in the Muir that digital is part of the way forward. And I think feedback from young people is that they favour this hybrid approach. They do have the teacher, and we've said 70% or whatever, or 80%, and some people 100% face-to-face learning. But there is a place for digital learning as we move forward, because we live in a changing world. And as Muir said, we need to educate them for their futures, and digital is very much part of the future.
Thank you, William. Councillor Angus McCormack, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Excuse me. I don't know how many reports over the course of my life I have read and tried to implement as a teacher. But the interesting thing about this is the emphasis on putting the child first. That's not new. That's been there. Certainly most of my teaching life has been the emphasis on the child. And it's a question of just how exactly you go about doing that that is very important. And I think we have to be open to every methodology that we can possibly use in education in order to deliver that for young people. And it is the case that many, many young people just cannot cope with the education system at all. It is therefore very important that we have as many channels of education as we can possibly manage. And the opening up of eSchool was an eye-opener for me. I was absolutely amazed at the way in which young people responded to it and the benefits that they achieved from it. It's one tool in the education approach that we have. And another thing that we have introduced in schools in terms of removing bureaucracy is executive head teachers. The whole purpose of the executive head teacher is to take the bureaucratic elements of schooling away from the teachers in the classroom. That is one of its purposes. And I very much supported it for that particular reason. And I see a great deal of positives have come out of that, particularly, of course, in the primary sector. I don't see it going to be very easy for us to move forward, Chair, with this unless the Scottish Government is prepared to fund it. I was a great supporter of the Curriculum for Excellence, but unfortunately it was severely underfunded, and subsequently it hasn't delivered as well as I had hoped it might. And I remember debates in this chamber around whether or not we should adopt it at all. And eventually we did indeed agree that we should go forward with it. But it really just has not been funded in the way that it should be. And I think, too, I'm a little bit concerned at the idea that we should push more responsibility onto teachers in terms of the running of the education service. I don't think teachers want to run the education service. I think they want to teach. And what we should be trying to do is to create for them a situation in schools whereby they are released to do what they do best, and that is to teach young people.
Thanks, Angus. Thank you. Councillor Grant Fulton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't believe there's any opposition to online learning as long as it's used to enhance face-to-face teaching, not undermine it. There's a lot of reference to digital learning within this document. and quite interesting references. Emphasis was placed on mental health, and young people reported that the last 2 years had been a nightmare. That's quite a interesting statement. I just wonder, how does distance learning tie in with the mental health needs of our pupils and the proposed reduction of face-to-face teaching? At the end of the day, teachers are the ones who can identify issues with kids. I have a real fear about how we're moving forward here. Thanks, Chair.
Can I ask Angus McLennan to come in on that one, please?
Well, I'd just like to clarify one point. Online learning in Cornwall and Sheer does not seek to, and never has, so to replace face-to-face teaching where that is sustainable. It's geared to add value and geared to choice. Everybody is talking about empowering schools. To me, that is the wrong message. The people that you should empower are the learners. Give them the choice. And they're taking that choice of a blended learning approach across Scotland, because these are the skills that we are currently, as members, as officers, using at this very moment in time. A blended approach. Some of us have chosen to come here, others, for various reasons, are able to come in remotely. Why are we denying our pupils that choice by some of the decisions that we are taking? The decision should be the children's. It should be there for them to take. And believe you me, one way or another, they will take them in the long term. And ultimately, it will be a blend of the face-to-face and the remote. One complements the other. It is a yin and a yang, not an either and another. And I think, we are wasting a lot of time talking about things that, are really common sense decisions and should be left to the learners.
Just briefly as well, in terms of mental health, we haven't had e-learning their whole lives, but a lot of young people have been unable to attend school because of their mental health over the years. And now through iSchool for interrupted learners, a lot of young people are able to access that education from their homes because of their mental health. And I would just echo Angus' point. Digital learning is complementing what we are already doing, and the vast majority of learning in our schools will continue to be face-to-face. But if I take Sir E. Scott as an example, they've had 13 additional courses available to them through online platforms of one sort or another, enabling young people to access courses in university that they wouldn't be able to get hires for if it was just school. So it's this complementing and supporting what we're already doing in a face-to-face environment in a changing world to support the young people. It's not an either or, it's face-to-face mostly, supported by digital, so that we can have the best offer for our young people.
Thanks.
This magazine that I'm going to share with Councillor has just been produced by a teacher based in Harris, along with her colleagues who are working across Scotland with 170 pupils who are excluded from normal schooling, not through misbehaviour, but through mental health issues, physical health. They've been working consistently over the past 18 months with these pupils, not only in delivering literacy and numeracy, but we have a designated guidance teacher who works with these pupils that normal schooling cannot cope with. They produce this kind of thing. They work collaboratively, they work collegiately, and the feedback from both pupils and parents is extremely positive. Now, I'm not for 1 minute advocating that that becomes the norm. All I'm saying is that for some pupils, both those that are excluded from schools, some of our highest achievers in schools, that it is really difficult to cater for, that there are other options out there. We have a pupil from Sir E. Scott at the moment doing politics with West Lothian Academy and doing really well there. We have a really mixed approach that we've never had before in the Western Isles. Not just E. Scott, the training unit of Cornwall and Sheer, Lewis Castle College are expanding their offer. Now, that is the key. Collaboration, flexibility in bringing this forward. Give the pupils the choice. We shouldn't be dictating what they learn, how they learn, or when they learn. They should have the choice.
Okay, thanks, Angus. Does anyone else come back? Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As I say, I don't believe there's any opposition to online learning, as long as it's to enhance face-to-face teaching, and certainly for subjects which wouldn't be available. That's absolutely fantastic. Just on a question of the pupils, has there been consultation with the pupils in how they regard harmonisation and the digital learning? Thanks.
Yes, very extensive consultation. We do a review practically of every unit that we teach right across the curriculum, everything from music to physics to we dabble in adult learning as well, and there's a very comprehensive feedback system where we use Microsoft Forms. We do formal interviews as deputy head teachers with all learners, and we have that on a database in the office, and much of it is contained in the evidence of impact report that I shared early this morning. Unfortunately, it was late coming in due to COVID in our multimedia unit, but I hope that people will take the time to read through it, and there's quantitative and qualitative evidence there from pupils, parents and other stakeholders.
Okay, thanks, Angus. I think if there's no other questions, we'll move on. Do members agree recommendation 3.1? Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to item 8, which is Education COVID-19 Service Update. This report provides an update in relation to the impact of COVID-19 on delivery of the education service and moves towards post-pandemic recovery, and notes that since the last COVID-19 update provided to committee in November 2021, Corla schools and nurseries face very significant challenges as the number of cases reached record levels locally between January and March 2022. Donald A. MacLeod will speak to this report, and Donald is the head of Education North. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And as you point out, this is part of a series of reports that we have taken to members to make sure that you're informed about the circumstances of the Corla's response, and specifically, obviously, Education and Children's Services response to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Possibly, I'd hope this might be the last report, but you're also, I'm sure, well aware of currently potentially increasing numbers in our communities. This report covers the period of time from that last report, November 2021, up to approximately mid-May 2022. And in this period of time, sat between January and March, some of the most challenging times that our services have faced in the duration of the pandemic. And the report provides some information in the first part in relation to the numbers of cases that we were responding to. We saw very significant increases in the number of both pupil and staff cases, particularly between January and March 2022. And as it stood from when schools first returned from the first lockdown in August 2021, that we've had 2,059 cases within our total population of 3,758 pupils. There are double cases within that. It's not 2,059 individual cases. We have reports of young people and staff who have had COVID on more than one occasion, but it still dictates and demonstrates, should I say, a very significant number of COVID-19 infections across that time. Significantly for us in that period, in the early part of 2022, our services were very significantly challenged in terms of continuing provision when our daily reporting and service of staff showed that we had 86 at the peak, 86 staff per day missing from our schools for COVID reasons. And taken together with routine other absences, our schools are missing more than 100 staff a day at that time. A significant element of how the service coped with that impact was to do with the fact that there was an almost exact correlation between staff and pupil absences. So pupil numbers were also significantly lower at that same time. But also it was down to a very significant commitment and flexibility within our staff, within and across our schools, to make sure that services were maintained. And despite that level of adversity that we faced through that time, all statutory school services were maintained without disruption, and almost all early years provisions were able to be sustained without disruption as well. We did have some short-term closures in some early years provisions due to just not having any staff because of the COVID-19 restrictions that were in place at that time, particularly around self-isolation. These closures that did happen in early years provisions were kept to an absolute minimum and were only in place when they absolutely had to be. And I think it's important that we recognise the contribution and commitment of our staff in making sure that in these most difficult circumstances, these services were maintained. The report goes on to describe some of the impact on attendance for pupils and staff, which obviously was significant around that period of time again. And you'll see from the table included in paragraph 6.5 that in the peak of pupil absences in March of 2022, on that time we were seeing nearly 14,500 half-day absences for pupils, which is very significant. But again, our learners and our staff have worked exceptionally hard to make sure that these absences had a minimal impact on attainment, and the support of schools and the National E-Learning Offer from eSchool and the support provided by eSchool to our schools helped to address that. It's important to note that the majority of absences were short-term, and although there were a large number of them, they were not of long duration. The report also goes on to discuss that we're still living with COVID-19, it hasn't gone away, and our schools continue to have risk assessments in place that reflect the latest national guidance. From April 2022 and onwards into May, there were a number of restrictions that were lifted that opened up operations in schools. Face masks, face coverings requirements were removed, as were a number of other restrictions that were in place to protect school estate. There is still a risk assessment in place that's bespoke to every establishment that makes sure that the measures that are still required to be in place continue to be so, particularly around what's referenced in paragraph 6.7 to 6.9 in relation to maintaining good air quality in our schools. And there's detail there in a commitment made by the Commonwealth to make sure that there's a CO2 monitor in every learning space in all our schools, so that schools and staff can monitor their air quality in their learning spaces and make sure that good ventilation is maintained. And we know from national research that's an important factor in reducing the risk of catching COVID-19. It also includes some information on work that we're doing in recovery and support of learners, and also moves that we are working on to try and open up our school estates to wider participants who have not been able to access our schools for some time, including importantly parents and also for community access. And happy to get any questions from members on that report.
Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Again, not so much a question as a comment. I think as well as congratulating the staff in the schools on the tremendous work they did in adversity, it would be appropriate to congratulate the senior officers, Donald MacLeod and Mary Claire Ferguson, for all the support they gave to the head teachers. I was having some flashbacks there of a Vietnam type variety when I was hearing words like risk assessment and CO2 monitor, and I think I'll still go to my grave saying cover your nose, which I spent the last 2 years saying to young people as they slung their masks around their chins. But you know, all joking aside, we were tremendously well supported by Donald and Mary Claire.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Thanks. Right. So, what was I going to say? Do you members agree with recommendation 3.1? Right. Item 9, eSchool Impact Report Session 2021-22. This report provides an update in relation to the impact of eSchool during session 2021-22. Angus McLennan will speak to the report, and Angus is the head of eSchool. Thank you.
Tapla yn carach. Am dos gyfil maasg nid yma syliad. Ys hagach bawlyd aasg bwy economicach eSchool uityn dwsafantyn. Gymig orstanach mar hwst mi mar ha a baiedd gedig ska gro Covid is a mynyd im y fianacyn. Handa aasg trost cwntus cwnafoloch yn has eSchool edifitianaf tronafliona le paltus di yn ysgeitio da hwt eddadafyn ygys biachgan cloniw ygys nymparandan. Am ys miwg gyriwch cwt gan a hadafyn sŵl horsiora. Chosyn eSchool corred 1.7 million nocht de economy in Nederland as a leon geshachet. Gij, deiget keer op de groeig no jen een beheswige idir níos agus canmharai, sin idir luch tugisk zéile. As je tugisk is a goede kin, gan a gaie gedicht utere sinnedal, het je galappe. Us a cor is kiet trichet mile scolet, sin 130,000 scolet, a gal parst as intellectual DYW live a hakin. As je koopruchu le corret keet fichet boeien het realiste, a ha kur die curriculum na scoltien. Moren ju nach een kaal en George die there, us geharet fegin nach us nach de smunig het kaligenuf traviane galig hat een estutianuf shen. As je niet adev na hadven na suje histinus in SQA aan de galig arstige gemoor, us moren boek tjukisk waar we aan alappe na misk. Ha jurtesen zo'n teich de choret kiet us schachket de niklonig maar hoest mich henne. Na choerig ook aan school zo'n tiefer overen gehast schachet. Us ha nadev shen shidedi. Sa jeviachken itun edin jedevish dachuj van parenten agus van nog loin. Shen roin de school dus in kantje ijskol. Ha gunne vaag zo'n klang van George show. Maar hoest me ha niet is show het jarabig. Gewil teich voor gehast jaif teich in dachuj nan kutjunsachi agus huv slantje intin agus evitjana voor de warach edevi levig se skrivig. San shida as ha fémoch gan huv teich hos de gokruch Ukrainian et fiog alape kutjoch ha kored keet hiet gele takrig in shachko iskol son vi den of klassichen beurle erloine gan tjouliken shen goele heiger steun ha kored kiet tjoulige gal paarstende agus had shen in koorsten nog le ver gan deput saken juist. A goede kale gan show het boeiwoorde horstet farsenjach tui huf goespedden doch launes nelen en schier. Agus kormen horst doch laun aan de boenskoltin agus aarstkoltin e fjörden jelan us giterave kun maasjente shen ma hokrus had de golasasende. Agus as je niet mama tangel gan goede boeiens gan goede njach het vi sasan heel as een unisch garasine die gianef. Gan je ach naar parst gemapik de jemust gemama moor. Am ich pakkel mit griakt die huns gien, ach man die an mich en schon tange horst gan lennis schon reinat. Geharet Bernard Chisholm van a studie gevolgen, wel leer schon hier liheke hu iskola sich hier golmach. Sa Uliam donloch aan drasten na studie ugus skippe volgen is teich gehumaden van oor schon. Tanke haret de vanstit bur buil ugus offiken cornly magede gewakken. Ik roi absamen. Geharet in jugin, if is gaheid aan de roeien olem, maar Katrina Stewart, neusmach karamik, ugus gornig Paul Steele. En is na janast. Roeien horlet, roet ska en goed glonig, we gaan siap leone, nach erin cornlis bi elan en alappe, ik een aanmat. Ugus gaak shen chine, le kim toshich, es ne helan nier, hu vuil mer loine. Sir ska shen gier realtes, de halappe ugus volle marapor stuurde gaal fjeugd na toege na de nog COVID-19. Maar gedug hebben zo'n tange horst de skippe studie ugus lokoprig iskal heen een op in een wachte een lessige gooien is mogen tjukisk hadden ze een tiaplion maar gedug kus ze begat ne berukkerige gaan een goede sjosser skolet ugus nach unsichi. Gaat en mago tiochen igen geharet het kunnig mag gewaan a brew us Alan Smithyman van de Russische technologies us een goed gemoord die fase iskal van niet hoshach tang. I mean, political questions be egal.
Thanks a lot, Angus. Does anybody want to ask any questions about that report? No. I'd just like to take the opportunity. I mean, obviously you're finishing on Friday. Just like on behalf of the committee, I'd just like to thank you for all the hard work and the commitment that you've made to these schools since you started. It really has become a world beating thing. And I mean, I've been seen involved in other educational updates elsewhere in the world, and it really is now online teaching is really now looking to be a panacea to help island communities such as ourselves to actually provide and deliver the education that the young people in these places need. So it truly is a world-beating thing that you've actually developed there. And so I'd like to really praise you, the work that you've done, and the whole team, and have a good retirement. You've earned it, you really have. So thanks a lot, Angus.
Absolutely.
Who's
Angus,
just Angus is in first, so just sorry. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just would like to endorse the remarks you said in connection with Angus and his position in East Gall. I had the pleasure of working with him during the time that I was chairing the Education Committee. I learned a great deal from that. I spoke several times with John Swinney, who was at the time in charge of education in Scotland. He was most enthusiastic and gave us a huge amount of support, financial support as well. But the fact that he did that, the reason that he did that was because he was convinced by two people. One was Bernard Chisholm, whose idea this really was, I guess, and the other was Angus MacLennan, who put such a lot of work to making this work, and it is working. I haven't heard any negatives about East Gall, none at all. I've had a huge number, principally, I guess, at the time when I was chair of education, a huge number of reports of young people who have achieved things in their lives that they would not have achieved had it not been for East Gall. They were able to do additional subjects which were not available in their schools, which allowed them to go on to university, for example. Many, many examples of that. And many examples of young people who were unable to come into school for a variety of reasons. Some of these were mental health reasons, who were able to be educated at home, and who have, because of that, been able to go on to a much fuller life than they would otherwise have had. It's just one tool. I recognize that. It's not the be-all and end-all or the panacea or anything like that, but it has achieved great positives, and it's thanks to Angus and his team and the support that he's had over the years from this council and the Scottish Government that it is the success that it is, and I hope it goes on to much greater successes. And have a good retirement, Angus.
Thanks, Angus. Councillor Donald Crine, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a member of your committee. Not dissimilar remarks from Mr McCormick. I want to thank Mr MacLennan for his report and wish him well in his retirement and thank him for all his work. I mean, I think we can be justly proud as a local authority for what has been achieved through East Gall. I mean, it's been the envy of other local authorities, and it's gained international recognition and has international reach. And again, the Scottish Government, as Mr McCormick has pointed out, have been very supportive and have embraced it as a key tool in learning. And in terms of where would we be without East Gall during the COVID pandemic? It was absolutely crucial in continuing education for our young people. And as the report outlines too, it is also a key revenue generator for the local economy. It's protected jobs, it's created jobs, and it provides equity and parity for children from the bud to the bara to be able to access subjects that they would otherwise not be able to enjoy and to achieve. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of in terms of this innovation. And I want to thank Mr MacLennan and his team for all they've done over the years in promoting it. And long may it prosper, and long may we as members of this authority promote it as well and protect it as a key learning mechanism for the future.
Thanks, Donald. Thanks a lot. Right, is this Councillor Norman MacDonald?
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I'd just like to echo the sentiments of Councillor McCormick and Councillor Crichton. I think without East Gall during COVID, we'd have been particularly strapped in how we delivered education to our estate. And as Angus himself has pointed out, the range of subjects on offer that we've now been able to offer to pupils, and it is about the pupil, and it's about the offerings to the pupil and enhancing the subjects that they can now learn online in this innovative platform, internationally recognised, as Councillor Crichton said, has been phenomenal. And it is about the pupil and offering pupils a better choice and a wider choice of subjects. And I hope Angus has a very productive retirement. I'm sure there will be many demands from other folk on his talents and time as well. But I'm sure it'll take several months before he decides what he's going to do next. He's a good guy, and he's one of our leaders in our education portfolio. And I in my one and only meeting with John Swinney, he was very complimentary to both Bernard and Angus in the way they brought this forward, and it's one justifiably that the Western Isles Education Department can be proud of. And I'm sad to see him go, but I know he'll have a happy retirement and hopefully a long one. Thanks.
Councillor Callum McLean.
Yes, can I first make an admission that I was one of the skeptics initially on eSchool. I was quite honest about that. Because by and large, I'm a dinosaur in education, and I came from a dinosaur age, you know. So, but I went to visit Angus and to Alan Smithyman and got an undertaking. I saw what was going on in the early years, and it began to change me. I'm not saying I'm entirely convinced or converted completely yet, but going after listening to Angus and seeing what he's produced here, I can actually say that he's done an absolutely wonderful job. And I do believe that he's the only type of person that could do it, because there was adversity, and there is adversity, and we have to be honest. You know, some teachers are a wee bit apprehensive that this is going to replace a one-to-one teaching with a teacher with pupils. And there is an undertaking and there's a commitment that this is, and he said it today, I think he used the word complementing what is there. And that's the key to it. And it's winning over minds and people on this issue. And that's coming up still with staff as well. It's to say to staff that it is a complement rather than overtaking or a substitute for it. And that is the good thing about it, because certainly the work that's been doing, and I hadn't heard of iSchool until last week when I started reading this, and I started reading into it, and it seems to be a great resource. So the resource is there, but may I say, and finally, and say to him that the glossy magazine he's produced there, I'm sure if he could produce sheep as glossy as that, and is going to do that in his retirement from Friday onwards, then I'll see a definite change in some of the sheep and grass. But anyway, I wish him well.
Can I take this opportunity to make two comments? One is that I can now retire in peace, seeing I've converted Colin McLean. And secondly, Geoffrey Howe once said to Dennis Healy, and I think it's very appropriate in these circumstances, it feels as if you've been nuzzled by an old ram. I won't finish the quote. You can find it out for yourself.
Thanks a lot, Angus. Do members agree to note the report? Thank you. Right. Item 10. Education provision, Stornoway Primary Sports Development Update. This report provides a progress report update about the development of a new sports facility at Stornoway Primary. On the 21st of September 2021, the caller agreed to the submission of a report proposing construction of a multi-purpose covered sports facility at the school. And upon presentation of that report in November 2021, the caller approved the development of a sports facility with a maximum construction cost of 1.8 million. Donald A. MacLeod will speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report comes before Council, before the committee, should I say, again today, to provide update and to seek a decision in support of the project. As it's been identified, this is a project that's been a fairly long time in the making and has been before the committee previously. And the last time that it was with a proposed plan, it was for the construction of a traditional build 180-metre square extension to the existing gym at the school. And the outcome of that meeting determined that that wasn't the desired approach, and the budget was agreed at 1.8 million to explore alternative construction methods that would maximise the size of a much larger hall to be developed at the school. And officers of the Corla have worked with the school and the Parent Council since that time to develop a design for a sports hall and complex at the school of tensile steel and fabric construction that allows for the potential within the budget for a hall that could achieve up to approximately 640 square metres in size. Round about 4 badminton courts was the proposal. In the intervening time as well, as people will be well aware, there have been some very challenging economic circumstances that have meant that construction costs have been increasing significantly and dramatically in the intervening months. And as a result of both that and changes to the design and specification to try and ensure that we maintain a building of the size desired at 4 badminton courts, the report today seeks an extension of that original budget of 1.8 million for an additional 150,000 to be added to increase the development budget to 1.95 million, with the intention that that would allow the securing of the 4-court hall design that's included in appendices. There is within the report as well an option that has been explored with colleagues in Assets, Finance and Resources that would allow for a smaller hall to be delivered on the existing budget. But the report does seek the support for the £150,000 extension to the budget. The report goes on to provide some information around the work that's been done by the steering group and officers of the Corla to try and make sure that the budget, the project stays within the development budget and provides detail on the nature and type of building and positioning of it within the school campus that's been desired. I highlight in item 6.5 the various sizes and expected development costs for what's in the report as option 1 and 2, and also at 6.6 a comparison diagram that indicates how this has been the hall element of the building, would compare to existing halls that maybe people can use to determine a reference point in comparison. The report also goes on to explain around the finance for the project and a number of risks, particularly some concerns around the risks to the project in light of current economic challenges, and a recognition that we need to act to make sure that we secure this project now rather than risk delay and further increase in costs. This has been a long-standing and continuing process with the school and the Parent Council. And since the preparation and submission of the report for committee, we've been undertaking further consultation. We had the opportunity at events at the school sports days in recent weeks, to map out the building onto the playing fields in a proposed location that it would be, and provide opportunity for consultation in relation to that. Whilst there's been a lot of recognition that this is a very positive investment, there has been some feedback in the design for the 4-court hall that identified that storage in that design was not sufficient for the size of the hall. And in recognition of that, and since the completion of this report, we've been looking to adapt the design to accommodate more storage within the existing proposed footprint, to make sure that we can maximise the storage available and also achieve a 4-court hall. And as was referenced at the beginning of the meeting today, there's been an additional appendix added to the Teams SharePoint at item J10D, which shows a later adaptation to the design that allows for a doubling of the storage available from the original 40 square metres up to 80 square metres, or equivalent to 13.5% of the building, whilst also maintaining the Sport Scotland standard for 4 badminton courts, with the hall obviously equivalently reduced by 40 square metres to 598 square metres, but still compliant with the standards to have the size of badminton courts with runoff areas that would be required. And although there's believed to be a possibly approximate £20,000 increase in the costs for that, it's predominantly related to the addition of structural steel between the modular bays in the building to accommodate a mid-bay partition. We believe that these costs could be absorbed within the proposed 1.95 million budget that's been sought today. And I'd be happy to take questions from members on any matters relating to that report.
Does that, Councillor Ray McKenzie?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I haven't actually had a chance to look at the modified thing there, and I'm not quite sure how in space how it relates. I want to come back on the project, but if Mr. MacLeod could perhaps give more information on that. How does it relate to you know, option 2 as a what, and in space, size, and so forth? Oh yeah. So
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, in relation to option 2, it retains the total building size in its entirety at 716 square metres. It reduces the size of the playing hall from 638 to 598. That's a reduction of 40 square metres, but continues to be able to provide 4 badminton courts. The 40 square metres saved from the footprint of the hall space is allocated to storage and increases the storage allowance in the design from 40 square metres to 80 square metres. I have paper copies of the modified design if anyone can't access it on the SharePoint, and can make that available. But the building is modular in design and is made up of sectional bays with trusses in between. And the original design that was drawn up positioned partitions where the structural steel already was, and that created storage space at the moment at that point in option 2 that was at 40 square metres or 6% of the building footprint. And in recognition of that feedback that we received on that design, we have tried to increase the storage whilst maintaining the 4 court hall design and operating within the proposed budget extension. So just to clarify, that keeps the overall building footprint at 716 square metres, but takes 40 square metres from the hall to add 40 square metres of storage by creating a mid-bay partition that allows for that space to be created.
Can I then ask, what's the situation regarding toilet space? Are there sufficient toilets in this particular plan for a four-court? I mean, presumably you're going to have it might be two classes taking PE, as, you know, and that's a lot of pupils.
Yes, the building has been checked for compliance in terms of that as well, and it contains within the ancillary space in the building 3 toilet areas, a disabled toilet and 2 other toilets, and that's been assessed and deemed to be appropriate in terms of the size of the building. It also contains within that ancillary space a changing area. The report at paragraph 6.7 does detail some of the design adaptations that the working group have accommodated in terms of trying to make sure that the building does remain within budget and within specification, whilst trying to accommodate all the desired attributes that the school and the working group have been aiming to achieve.
Chairman, I have this file here going back years and years, and you know, numerous education meetings, numerous parents' council meetings. I won't go through them all just now. I'll just condense it into one sheet. It'll be really to see. But the fact is that, you know, this has been going on for over 20 years, and originally the original request was for a gym, for sufficient changing space, for sufficient storage, and also an all-weather pitch. Now, the original gym, which has been shown on the map, could only had sufficient space for 1 bench. Now, this is a fantastic improvement. There's no doubt about it. We're on the last lap here, and it's real progress has been made in the last few months and in the last year or so. recent discussions which have been held with the parents group and so on had a third option, excuse me, let's say after effects, which was an extra bay. Now this was considered, I think, by the working group, and then it hasn't appeared on this final draft. So I think I was told that was costed approximately 200,000 extra. Now, other projects we have with this council, have come in at the budget figure, and then, 1 minute we're hearing there was one project which is 45 million, and then it was 65 million, and then 85 million, now it's come back to 75 million, whatever it is. We're talking about 200,000 here to get a perfect facility. And, it would be a shame to lose this opportunity for a facility that's going to last years and make such a big difference to Stornoway Primary. Stornoway Primary is in Stornoway North. I'm from Stornoway South. But the last time I asked, there was over 100 pupils coming from Point, from Ness, from Broad Bay. It's not a Stornoway school as such, because so many people are coming in to Stornoway. Parents are coming in and they're putting their kids into the Stornoway Primary, and they have after school and all the rest of it. So, let's not be parochial about it. The school actually pegged out the site for the sports day last week, and I saw it pegged out myself, and the majority of parents were impressed, but it also showed the extra bay, which is pretty small in comparison with the whole building. So I would suggest that we support option 3, which has the extra bay. And as I say, they pegged it out. It looked very reasonable. And I would please ask you to support that before I peg out. Quite. Okay.
I would come back maybe and clarify some of the points raised by Councillor Mackenzie there. One of the first of them being that the school, as the main client group and users of the building, have expressed their approval and satisfaction for the current design proposals. And whilst we note the aspirations of parents to extend the footprint of the building, our predominant focus is on meeting the needs and desires of the school and its learners. There was proposals made for the addition of an additional bay to the design, which has been costed in provisional terms to be at 2.14 million, which would require an extension of the budget of £340,000, which is not an insignificant amount. In addition to that, it potentially overspecifies the building in terms of storage and would increase the storage capacity, and depending on balance of ancillary spaces as well, to over 20% of the building. The other point in relation to that as well is how the project is financed, and ultimately, as a decision of the council, this is coming from offset of the capital programme, and the more that is allocated to the spend from what is ultimately a future capital programme, the less the resources the council will have for other projects, and that's an important consideration in the decision. But I just provide the information in my role as officer on that, and it's a matter for elected members to determine.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I was just the point Mr. MacLeod made there about the impact on future capital programme is really important. I mean, I've supported this decision. I think it was last December we agreed to 1.8 million, and that was significantly above what was asked for originally by the school and the parents. So I think we've gone way beyond what was asked for in terms of the provision that has been planned here. But I think we need to consider, the future and the erosion of the future capital programme, because there are other demands out there in terms of our school's estate. At present, as I speak, we have severe capacity issues at Tongue Primary School that need to be addressed. So there has to be parity. And I take Mr Mackenzie's point about it not being parochial and about the school catering for across the island community. But we have to take into consideration other demands on our school estates and the maintenance of them going forward. So while I support the recommendation at 3.1, I think we need to be cautious that there are no further demands upon our future capital programme regarding this project.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate the point made. But once again, you know, you're talking about you know, Tongue, and I appreciate work's got to be done on Tongue and back and whatever. And it's, you know, it's clearly shown in the forthcoming report. But the fact is that years ago, Stornoway Primary stood back. They took Leverburgh was taken. Barra was taken. I don't know how far Barra's got, but and North Uist, the three schools in North Uist were combined into one first-class facility there. So each time Stornoway Primary has been knocked back, and you know, said fair enough, okay, if there is a top priority, but it's got to the stage where Stornoway Primary now it's at least first priority. And Mr McLeod's point about 340,000 extra, that's 340,000. It's not the total on top of 1.8. Well, it is on top of 1.8, not on top of 2.1. So it's not, the total isn't 340,000 extra. You know, you're lumping in what's already been added in option 2.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that the position arrived at by our officers is quite amazing, really, considering the situation that we are currently in terms of capital finance. You have to remember at the last round of funding, we got no capital at all. And if only the Scottish Government would give us capital, we could do all sorts of things. But we don't get capital. And that's a serious problem for this authority. And I'm sincerely hoping that the next round that we are actually going to receive a capital allowance. In the meantime, however, we have to do the best we can within the scope of where we're at. And taking this decision to take money from other capital projects to satisfy this particular capital project is a big step, because there is no guarantee that that money is going to be replaced from anywhere. I am quite happy to support the proposal that's before us today, but I think we have to be reasonable in our approach to this. We've gone a long way to address the wishes of the school, a long way, in fact, given that we have no money. And I really don't think we should be adding further to the problem that we're going to have of replacing that capital money at some point in the future.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just from my own perspective, I mean, as I say, we started with a maximum budget of 1.8 million, and we are actually looking at effectively being 340,000 over budget with the 2.14, and in fact 150,000 over budget with the option we've got in front of us. And what we are effectively doing to allow this to happen is we've effectively robbed Peter to pay Paul at the moment, and it's not a concern, but it's something we have to be very mindful of, and something I'm actually quite concerned about. And so I think we give a budget, and the budget has to be used in the best way that it can. And sometimes there's always compromises. You either have a smaller space in terms of playing and have 3 badminton courts or 3.5 badminton courts. And I know of sports centres and very good facilities that are actually only 3 courts. And or you have the forecourts and maybe you take a compromise on the storage. We've only got so much money to play with and only so much money to use, and so there's always going to be a trade-off in some shape or form. And so, I mean, I would be certainly asking people to support the recommendation, and I just want to put that forward to people here. Do you agree the recommendation at 3.1?
Agree.
No. Ray, do you want to come in there?
Well, I don't know how much support I'm going to get here, but if any. But I still feel that we must stick by the principle. I can remember Angus McCormack in 2013 saying when the Sandwich Hill School was closed and the pupils were transferred to Stornoway, which is a huge school, and you know they need all the facilities. And he said at that time, the pupils from Sandwich have been transferred to Stornoway Primary, and there's been no money spent on the receiving school. And, you know, I quite agree with him. I mean, I quite agree with him 9 years later, whatever it is. And I'm very pleased that, you know, they're going to get this, you know, which actually helps with three other points that I made earlier on. But it is a shame that we'd lose out for, you know, a matter of 100,000 or whatever, when we're talking about huge projects going on in the council at the present time, which is, there's bound to be slippage. And the alternative is money could be found, you know, by borrowing, prudential borrowing. But okay, I'm prepared to go along with, I'll move, you know, the extra bay for this, but can you hear me? Yeah. I spoke as soon as my light went red. So thank you, Angus. Yeah, I'm finished. I've made my motion.
As an amendment? Are you taking that, trying to take that forward as an amendment?
Yeah, some of us couldn't get in. These lights aren't working properly, to be quite honest. We're in a new system here, and we can only one person can come in. You know, I thought we would be much more. 6 of us could get in at one time, but it's quite frustrating actually when you can't get in. So we have to go back to the old system of waving hands. Sorry. I think that before we come to a decision, I need more clarity. I don't know about any of the other representatives here. We're talking about 150,000 being added here to become 195. That's an agreement. How much extra above that 1.95 would this actually cost? That's the first thing. The second thing is, could we get this extra? We obviously can get 150,000 from somewhere. So where could we then borrow, or whatever Councillor Mackenzie has said, where could we get an extra money to have this? It would seem to me that if we're going for a facility that is lacking just that little bit, why on earth are we stopping if it's only going to cost £150,000 extra? I'm saying that if it's only because I look at an example there. Every time I come to a meeting last term, Barra, for instance, was going up by millions every year. Every 6 months. So it's not a precedent. This isn't a precedence. There is a precedent set already before this that we were able to put it. So my view is, and I've seen the instance. I was part of the schools project when it started. For instance, the Nicholson Institute. We were asked by some staff to actually give us an increase, give us another couple of rooms. If we had done that at that time, we wouldn't have the issues we have in the Nicholson at this present time. So I'm saying is, although we're trying to be prudent, and I understand what Donald is coming for, the prudency that he's talking about. And I do understand what Councillor Crichton says, that it may impact on any, but it shouldn't impact on any other. There shouldn't be a knock-on effect to any other. For instance, it shouldn't have a knock-on effect to what I would do in Tongues, what we would hopefully happen in Tongue School. So I don't believe that that should be the case. If we have, could we have extra funding, and where could we get the extra funding for? How much?
Yeah, and just to clarify that we do know the cost of the extension of the building by another bay. A preliminary costing that's been conducted by AFR colleagues, which puts it at 2.14 million, which is 190,000 more than the recommendation, and a total of £340,000 more than the original budget. I would make the point again, which may have been not picked up, in that the school, as the predominant client here, is happy with the proposal that's being made. And I think that's an important thing for us to note. The other option that is there is for some further adaptation of that internal partition to increase the ancillary storage within the 716 square metre footprint at the sacrifice of the hall size, which is another consideration that can be made. That will come at possibly a degree of increased cost, because the fit out of the ancillary space comes at a greater cost than the size of the hall. But there can potentially be some scope to play around with the internal storage. And as in the layout map in paragraph 6.6 of the report shows, for those of you who have it in colour, the orange line, which would show the 3.5 court size option, which is another, that's the equivalent of 2 bays being given over to ancillary space. So just to note these, Chairman, thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I've got an email from the Parent Council who are actually saying that although they are happy with what they have, which I would expect that to be, they would say that the increase would facilitate a better facility. But they're saying, I'm sorry, but that's the email I've got here. I got it the other day. Don't know if other members got it. But they seem to think that although they're happy with the movement that's going on, they're a bit wary about, or they're asking if we could go this extra little bit. That's what I understand by the email. I don't know if other members are the same.
Yeah, I can just clarify the distinction. When I reference school, I'm talking about the staff and pupils of Stornoway Primary. I'm aware that the Parent Council, as a separate entity, have sent communication to the elected members, but in our consultation has been with the school, and I've indicated their happiness with the design in terms of the staff and the pupils.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. The school is 53 years old, and even in the late 80s, it was outdated. You know, you had accommodation for about, 15 pupils in the changing area, and a very, very small hall, 1 badminton court size, and a football pitch that was just a bog. And the expectations of the pupils and the parents is huge. And if we don't get it right this time, I back Councillor Ray Mackenzie on this. I think we should go the whole way and deliver what's expected by the community. Not just in Stornoway, as Ray said, there are pupils travelling from throughout the island.
Yeah, Mike. Donald McSween, please. Do you want to come in, Councillor Donald McSween?
Thanks, Chair. I'm satisfied with the what is in the report. I think if it's a community that are wanting to improve these facilities even more, what is stopping the community from taking over the project? That's what happened with Sportsnish at Lionel School. I understand it's what happened in the Asclage and in Uig as well, where the community have, you know, they've got community halls alongside the school, and the school uses these facilities. The community of Stornoway, my standing from the outside, my perception is that Stornoway expects everything. What is stopping the community of Stornoway from going ahead and doing this themselves?
Okay, thanks, Donald. Right, so I think, okay, Francis.
Sorry, I had put my light off in case it was
Yeah, no,
interfering with
sorry,
somebody
sorry,
else. Having been part of a project where when the final building was delivered, it didn't perhaps cover everything we needed, and we're now having to go back after 10 years to add. I think I would be, mindful of that it is important to get things right on the first attempt when you are, making this massive investment. The area that I was wondering about is the changing area. It looks to me rather small in comparison to the storage. And when I went to Stornoway Primary to the pitch, it was the changing area as well as the storage that they were concerned about. And that most recent update has more of storage area, but I can't tell without looking in more detail. Does that make the changing area even smaller? And I think anybody who's ever been involved with a school will know changing rooms are the areas where things can happen, and if they're very cramped, then they're not particularly useful. Now, perhaps the school building itself is in proximity to this new proposal, and maybe pupils will be changing there. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I just wondered, is there any scope to look again at that, the two 40-metre storages and maybe take half of that and make it bigger changing? Is it that flexible? I think you mentioned flexibility, Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Yes is the ultimate answer to that. In the amended drawing in the third appendix document, the ancillary facilities of changing and toilets is at exactly the same size at 38 square metres. The division of that space into two 40-metre storage spaces and the 38-metre ancillary space is arbitrary in terms of that. The critical element in the design is the partition that separates it from the hall, and there is scope in the design to increase the ancillary toilet and changing space and reduce the storage. And I would clarify further in that when the design was shared with the school in the very first instance, they were happy with 40 square metres of storage in the hall, which is below the specification. But we have, in discussion with the school, identified that the existing gym hall has the climbing frames and equipment for gymnastics fixed in the wall in that space, and they have fairly significant storage in that part of the school. So it would need to be clarified that the storage space that exists in the school already will house part of the PE equipment storage, and the school didn't feel it required the level of storage specified by Sports Scotland for this hall purpose. However, we have been working on taking on that feedback. So in answer to Councillor Murray's question, ultimately, yes, there is scope to adjust the internal partitions within the ancillary bay to reduce the storage and increase the ancillary space. But it is the same size in all the designs.
Okay, thanks, Donald. Councillor Ian Macaulay, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Just following on from Councillor Murray's question, I was going to ask something similar myself. Am I correct in saying the amended changing room will be a changing room rather than two changing rooms? And do we know approximately how many people that will facilitate? Thanks, Chair.
The design of including separate changing areas for boys and girls, or two teams, or whatever the split would be, was removed from the design much earlier on stage. The design of the ancillary space at the moment is an open area, cloakroom type area, with benches, an area for changing. That's not two separate spaces, and is ultimately unchanged apart from a slight configuration change from the design. And in some extension to the question from Councillor Murray, there is scope to adjust that within the existing footprint of the ancillary space, if the desire was there to make it more. The space is designed for one class at a time to use, and the intention being that the changeovers between classes would not necessarily be taking place at the same time. But there is scope to adjust that within that part of the building. In addition, the school was predominantly of the view that a lot of the children would be already arriving changed and would not be necessarily changing in the space. And one of the positional elements that was being considered was the proximity of the building as close as possible to the school exit point. So there'll be very short journey from one building to the other for the pupils.
Okay, thanks, Donald. So I'm going to ask again, insofar as the committee's interests, do members agree the recommendation 3.1? Sorry.
I'm going back to the extra bay, which is costing 100,000 extra, and I'm sticking by that. And if I get a second, good.
Norrie, Councillor Norrie MacDonald, please.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I'm not sure if Councillor Mackenzie managed to get a second for this amendment or not. I was minded to vote for the motion or the recommendation anyway. But my primary concern here is, it's not really a concern. We agreed this a couple of years back, and we made progress in getting a decent facility for the school. I would like to knock everybody into a room, the 8 Stornoway councillors, the parent council and the school themselves, and get them to come forward with a proposal for us, because I'm not happy that the fact that the parent council recommend one thing and the school want another. Surely, given the advanced conversations we've had over the last couple of years of this, and I know there have been changes, and I know prices have changed, and people's wishes might have changed as well, but knock everybody into a room and come away with something, and I'm sure we can all support it. But the fact that the parent council want one thing and the school are happy with another kind of troubles me. You would have thought that they would be on the same page, but that's neither here nor there. If it's just the one recommendation, I'm happy to go with it.
Okay, Norrie. We just want to check with Ray. You want to bring forward an amendment?
As I said before, I move that the design includes the extra bay, which apparently costs an extra 100,000. Thank you.
All right, we just have to check that. Donald.
I will clarify that's 190,000 estimated in a preliminary. Additional 190,000, and which would be 340,000 above the set budget. Yeah.
Just to clarify that, I didn't make the financial outcome of that. It was 2.1 million that Don McLeod quoted there. So 2.1 million. I move an extra B.
So just to clarify, my point was 2.14 million. So it's 150,000 requested in the recommendation, and an additional 190,000 above that, which comes to 2.14 million.
Okay, just want to check here. So I just want to bring Malcolm in here on the validity of this, because in terms of budgetary constraints.
Thank you, Chair. The committee needs to be clear the source of that additional funding, which I'm presuming is a call on the capital programme. But it's important the committee is clear about that.
So it's just to add to what's been said there, if you're going with this amendment, effectively you're Robbie, we're really concerned about going forward about the budget, and just how it will impact on the capital programme going forward. So
yes, just to clarify, it's from 1.950 up to 2.140. Yeah, it's from the recommendation that we're talking about. It's from the if we're going from the recommendation, it's not from the original 1.8. It's from the 1.95 to 2.14.
No, I'll just clarify that it's not actually, because the original budget was 1.8. We've said, well, we're prepared to move another 150,000 to accommodate the 13%, or 13.5%. What's effectively been asked for now is to increase that again to 2.1, which is the 350,000.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that we were quite happy with going to 1.95, but it's this little bit extra.
I'll just clarify. Councillor Mackenzie, can I just to clarify the wording of the amendment? So you're approving an increase in the project budget by £350,000 to secure the construction of a forecourt sports facility with the addition of an additional bay at Stornoway Primary with a maximum total project cost of 2.14 million. Is that a summary of your amendment?
Can I have a seconder for that, please? Okay. See, I'm the proposer for the motion. So I'll move the recommendation. Insofar as the committee's interest, do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Yeah.
You need a second.
Yeah. So Mustafa will be the seconder. Do you want to go to debate, or we just go straight to the vote? I mean, I think we've debated it pretty enough. We'll go straight to the vote.
We do have members of the committee joined by teams, so I think we'd have to go through a roll call. Just to clarify, particularly for the new members, I'll call out your name. You'll be asked to indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment. The motion is in the name of the chairman, seconded by the vice chairman, and is the recommendations in detail in the report that the Córa approve an increase in the project budget by 150,000 to secure the construction of a forecourt sports facility at Stornoway Primary with a maximum total building cost of 1.95 million. And the amendment is in the name of Councillor Mackenzie and seconded by Councillor Malcolm MacDonald, and it's to approve an increase in the project budget of 350,000 to secure the construction of forecourt sports facility with an additional bay at Stornoway Primary with a maximum total building cost of 2.14 million. So if you say clearly motion or amendment when your name is called. Chairman?
A motion.
Vice Chairman? Motion. Kenneth J. McLean?
Motion.
Ian M. MacLeod? Paul Steele? Susan Thompson? Grant Fulton? Robert Mackenzie? Ronald Fraser?
Amendment.
Kenneth MacLeod? Donald McSween?
Motion.
Colin McLean? Malcolm MacDonald? Ray Mackenzie? Angus McCormack? Dr. Francis Murray? With apologies from George Murray. Finlay Stewart? Oh, no, sorry. Norman MacDonald?
Motion.
And Reverend Hugh Stewart? Abstain. I don't think. Sorry, I'm just checking if any of the other religious representatives are online. Tw 12 for the motion, 5 for the amendment. The motion becomes the finding of the meeting.
Okay. Right. So what I was going to say. I don't know then if you want to stop for half an hour to allow anyone to get our lunch. I'm conscious there is a meeting at 2 o'clock. I don't know if you want to try and carry on for another half hour, see if we can get through as much of the agenda. Otherwise, you may need to adjourn until after this afternoon's meetings. All right. No, we'll try and get through them if that's the case. Right. We'll move on to item 11 then. Outdoor facilities at Uig School. This report details potential improvement in the outdoor sports facility located near Uig Primary School following agreement at the February 2022 series of meetings to a review of the outdoor facilities near Uig School. Patricia McLeod is available to speak to this report, and Patricia is the executive head for Rural Lewis. Thanks, Patricia.
Hello, Hultanje. So a request was made to review and improve the outdoor facilities at Uig School, particularly the Mugga area, the multi-use games area. It is in a reasonable condition and it would be more cost effective to improve rather than to renew it into a new site. However, as it is not owned by the Corner and it is a community managed facility, it was the recommendation that the Corner would support the community in an advisory capacity to develop the Mugga and apply for funding. It was also noted that there was an area behind the school which is within the Corner's ownership which could be developed and will be considered as part of the Learning in State strategy, which will assess investment priorities across schools in the Western Isles. So that's a brief summary of it, and then there's the two recommendations. Okay.
Thanks, Patricia. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Councillor McLean.
Being from that area, I've got a bit of vested interest in that sense. Sorry. What you're saying is that the Mugga outside the school doesn't belong to the school. So what area does belong to the school where the children play? Is it so small?
There's a playground.
Yeah,
there's a playground and there's an area behind the school as well, but it's really quite flooded. So that could be looked at when it needs priority to be improved. But there's a reasonable playground for the size of the school.
Yeah.
But they have use of the multi games area for gym and PE.
Yeah, that's right. But what I'm saying is that one of our visions as a council in the last 5 years was to encourage as much as we could the peripheral, the rural areas. And if we're going to do that, we must encourage the school. And it's one in one. Sorry, I'm been too much speaking this morning. So that at least we're moving towards helping the community in facilitating a better, because let's be honest with you, Muggas nowadays, all it is a tarmac area, which is, you're probably having children coming in every second day with cuts on their knees or whatever. I think we should be moving forward. We should have a vision for schools. And the vision for schools is, and I've said it before at many meetings, is that we should have a vision for school for an all-weather area for schools likes of Uig, as well as it is in the new schools in Scolfapple, and it's probably all Durham Uist has probably got all-weather. Am I right, Director? Am I? But they're new schools, but they should have been. But anyway, the Larrabout's a wee bit older than the rest. But I think that we should be moving towards that. But it's certainly is good in the recommendation that we are encouraging, we are actually helping the community in doing that.
Thanks, Callum. So any other questions, comments? So oh, sorry, Angus.
Thank you, Chair. Again, not a member of your committee, but as a councillor in the previous election in the Uig area, I fully support this because that school does need an all-weather pitch. I mean, these children up there were in dire straits in where they were playing, and I fully welcome Mrs. McLeod's proposal for this. And following on from Councillor McLean, we are in need in other schools. I mean, Sconaloch is another area that is in much needed for an all-weather Mugga pitch or whatever we can do in that area. And I would hope that we can bring that forward as a corner in this term. And I would hope that Mrs. McLeod, as executive head, can bring a report to this committee to pull that forward for Sconaloch as well as Sconaloch.
Thanks, Angus. Thanks for that. Right. So, do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Cheers, thanks. So item 12, report. Item 12, report by HM Inspector of Education, Skolnabach and Scolari Lochindur. This report informs the caller of the outcome of the joint inspection of Skolnabach and Scolari Lochindur by Her Majesty's Inspectors from Education Scotland and the Care Inspector in May 2019. Ms Kathleen MacLeod is available to speak to the report, and Kathleen is the Executive Head Teacher for Broad-Based Schools. Thank you.
Hi, Faith Grama. I'm just providing an update with regard to the recent visit of HMI inspectors to Scolavach and Sconarich Lochatua. Following the inspection in May 2019, the report was published in September 2019, where it outlined that they would revisit the school for a further follow-up visit. In March 2020, we entered the COVID-19 pandemic, and as a result, all inspections were suspended nationally. In June 2021, HMI inspectors re-engaged with the school for a virtual meeting with the head teacher regarding progress in terms of the recommendations made from the original report. In addition to that, they required detail in regards to the impact of COVID-19 on the health and well-being of the school community, the effect that the restrictions were having on learning and achievement, and also how the school was being led during the COVID-19 pandemic. In September 21, the inspectors announced that they would re-engage again with schools in the follow-up inspection cycle, and in November 2021 and December the following month, the school were visited by HMI inspectors virtually and also in person. The focus of the inspection was to assess how the school were supporting children, young people and their families during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they also looked at the recommendations of the initial inspection report and how they were being addressed. Overall, the visit was very positive. They were satisfied that the recommendations were being addressed successfully, and as a result, the school is no longer in the inspection cycle and has been signed off. They did recognise the challenges that schools were facing during this time and the difficulties that were faced in terms of restrictions and the impact it was having on learners. But overall, a positive report, and there's no further visits being made in relation to the original inspection report. I'm happy to take any questions.
So do members have any questions, Kathleen? Okay, so where are we now? So do members agree recommendation 3.1? Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. Cheers. Learning estate investment. Flip tongue, 13. Sorry, 13. I'm trying to get ahead of myself here. Like 15. Let's do 15 next. 13. Report by HM Inspector of Education, Tong School and Scolari, February 2022. This report is for noting and informs the caller of the outcome of a visit to Tong School and Scolari by Her Majesty's inspectors. This was a follow-up visit from December 2019, when the school was inspected by Her Majesty's inspectors from Education Scotland, and the nursery was jointly inspected by Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate as part of a follow-up visit from September 2018. And Ms Kathleen MacLeod is available to speak to this report. Kathleen, thanks again.
Thank you. Again, this report is to provide further detail in relation to the re-inspection or the revisit follow-up inspection for Tongue School and Nursery. The original inspection took place in September 2018 and the follow-up visit was in December 2019. Just prior to the pandemic, the report was released and they stated that they would also revisit the school for a follow-up visit, and this would be done within a year of the report being published. Again, as I've outlined previously with BAC, we entered the pandemic and all school inspections were suspended nationally. Similarly to BAC, HMI re-engaged with the schools in June 2021, focusing on the impact of the pandemic, the impact of the restrictions on learners, and also how the school was being led at that time. In November and December 2021, the inspectors visited the school virtually and in person. It was a positive experience, and they were satisfied that the recommendations from the original report had been overtaken and addressed successfully. They were also keen and satisfied with how the school was supporting children, young people and families during the period of the pandemic, and they felt that overall the school supported families very well. As a result, there'll be no further visits in relation to the original inspection report. So a positive outcome again.
Definitely. Do members have any questions? No. Okay. Do you agree recommendations from 3.1? Thank you. So we're actually going to 14 now. So item 14, learning estate investment. The report detailed the learning estate investment priorities for 2023 to 2028 and noted that investment in the learning estate is critical to delivering the educational curriculum. William MacDonald will speak to this, is available to speak to this report, and members,
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is just a first report in terms of the learning estate investment, and if you remember, at the last meeting of Education Committee, 4 priorities were agreed under 5.3. And as outlined in 5.2 as well, that there's a requirement for 50% match funding for any project going ahead, and with a diminishing capital programme, that can prove to be a challenge. And following on from conversations today, the Stornoway Primary and Oog primary facilities that have been discussed, people will want, and I know Councillor Morris referred to Scarnaloch, and there have been other references. So it would be our suggestion that we establish a member officer working group to look in more detail at proposals, and also the appendix here that gives us the condition of all our school estate and priorities and costings show that there's a huge amount of money required to bring our current estate up to a decent condition in some instances and to very good condition in other instances. So to marry the two in terms of new developments and required work is a challenging with a small pot of money, and happy to take questions at the moment. And the recommendation there is in terms of a working group, and Callum Mackenzie is here if there's any questions specifically on any of the condition of schools reports.
Okay, thanks, William. Councillor Ranald Fraser.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wish to refer to the appendix at 14B, and in particular to the segment indicating the 10-year strategy. Now, my question specifically to the Director relates to a school in my own area, namely Breaswick School. I will at this point add the caveat for those in the Chamber who may be unaware that Breaswick School has an important footnote in the history of Scottish education, where it was the first to offer Gaelic medium education back in 1986, something which I know we're all very proud of. In that appendix, for the 10-year strategy for Breaswick School, I would like to note the language you used, where it states, and I quote, potential for rationalisation with Scarnaloch, end quote. I assume the word potential would indicate that the likelihood of rationalisation is nil at present, Director.
That's right. It's November, updated November 19. Maybe Mr. Mackenzie can give an update, but please be assured that there is no intention on our part to rationalise. But this came from November 19, and it's something that we've been intending to update and look at our whole estate in terms of member officer working group and send officers out to look at the condition of schools and to update this list as part of the work of the member officer working group. I'm not sure if Mr. Mackenzie wishes to add anything.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a tool that we use to show the picture across the education estate, and it will be replicated across the whole corporate estate as well in terms of its property assets. So as you mentioned on that particular one in Breascloud School, that was mentioned for discussion in terms of rationalisation. There were a number of other potentials for rationalisation again as well. That doesn't mean that that is the strategy. That means that we can look at that as being an option in the future. It's not meant, as Councillor Fraser has mentioned, it's not meant to be a definitive on the rationalisation of schools. It's meant as a discussion document, if that helps.
I
Okay,
thank you for
thanks.
that clarification. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Chair.
Thanks, Ron. Right. So do members, who's announced? Sorry, Angus.
Sorry, Chair, again, not a member of the committee, but I think it would be amiss of me not to mention Scunnellaw again. And seeing Mr. Mackenzie's online, I would like him to have a look at the state of the roof of the school. I mean, when you drive, it's a state-of-the-art school in a good location, and when you drive past, it's actually looking quite an eyesore with the amount of moss that's growing on the roof now. So could we maybe build in maybe a clean of the roof, Mr. Mackenzie, at the earliest convenience if possible?
Yep, Community Cabinet.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The reason this report's coming up just now is actually to show the extent of the estate and the extent of works required. And I think going forward, we do have to prioritise how we spend what available resources we have across the estate, and that will be a future decision for members to take based on information that will be provided by officers. I'm happy to look at Scunnellaw just now and include that in whatever mix, but there will be other aspects of each of the schools we'll be looking at in more detail and reporting back to members on, just to make sure you've got a full picture of investment requirements across the full estate.
Okay, Cam, thanks a lot. Yeah, we'll add that into the list and take it from there. So do members agree there's no one else? Do members agree the recommendation in 3.1? Thank you.
Part of the recommendation is to establish a member officer working group. Are you wishing to appoint the membership just now, which would allow a start past summer, or are you wanting a report back on this? In terms of the membership, the chair and vice chair would are ex officio members of each MOUG, and you may wish to appoint a number of other members to the MOUG just now.
To switch.
And just to clarify, anyone appointed need not be a member of the committee. It's open to all members of the core rather than just members of the education committee.
Okay, Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Could I suggest we do it in similar style to the budget board, and we have one member from each ward in the MOUG?
Yep, I don't have a problem with that. Kevin, sorry. Yep.
Just to clarify, is that the chair and vice? Sorry, chair and vice chair plus 11 members, or are the chair and vice chair already representing their ward?
Up to the chair to decide.
No, I'm fine. If the other members in that ward are happy to have, you're happy with myself, Grant, and other members in your ward are happy to have you, Mustafa. I take it that's a yes then. Yeah, so we'll be included as from our ward, yeah.
So just for Ward 1, that would either be Councillor McLean or the councillor to be appointed, Councillor McLean. So we have representative from Ward 2. I don't know if you just want to go through all of that.
So, sorry, what have I been nominated for?
Just agree, yeah. You've been nominated for a working group to look at the school estates.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So Ward 2. So Ian, Councillor Ian McLeod. Ward 3. That's Mustafa. I'm Ward 4. Ward 5. Ward 6.
Sorry, that is Carla Skerug, so it will be either be Councillor Fraser or the councillor who will be elected next week.
I'm happy to defer it to the councillor to be elected next week. That's okay with the chair.
What's what?
Next is an turf share agus niche.
I'm happy to go on.
Then Lochatua. Yeah, so next is Lochatua. Stjorna Lochatua. He's Stjorna for Jace. And then
Backfired.
Stjorna for Jace. And finally Skieran Roo.
Yeah, I think probably Finlay's probably the best one because Finlay's actually working in the construction industry. So I think he'd probably have a better overall view of things. Not that I'm ducking out with these things, but yeah, I think probably Finlay would be the best guy for that.
And just to clarify, for the members who aren't present and have been appointed, it'll be obviously subject to that agreement.
Okay, thanks a lot. So with that, do members agree? Recommendation 3.1. Agreed. Right. Item 15, update on harmonised timetable. What we've decided to do with that is to withdraw that report. Following a meeting with the LNCT last week, there's obviously discussions with the working groups been set up to look at harmonised timetable and how both the EIS and the management side can work together to actually sort of take things forward. So we just felt it was appropriate to withdraw that at this present time. So item 16 is in private. So we'll move on to item 17, which is enhancing community physical activity through Crown Estate fundings. And this is an urgent report and details the community benefit of allocating Crown Estate funding to enhance community physical activity across the Outer Hebrides. The aim of the initiative is to empower third sector groups and clubs to enhance physical activity opportunities for our community. Tony Wade and Ian G.G. Campbell are available to speak to the report. Tony is the Sports Facility Services Manager and Ian is the Sports Development Services Manager. Thank you. So who's going to speak?
If I can maybe kick off, Chair, if that's okay. The purpose of the report is to support the work of community third sector clubs and groups across the island who are vital to our physical activity and health and well-being from Barra to Ness. Over the past 2 years through the pandemic, this has never been clearer because obviously the social interactions that young people have been able to maintain is vital to their mental health and physical health right across the islands. It'll also allow us to allow a little bit more equity of provision to certain sites where there is restricted access, for instance, at Sir E. Scott School in Harris just now. And it'll also give clubs and groups the opportunity to use the fundraising that they do to currently pay facility hire to develop their clubs and organisations. That could be coach development, mainland trips for their youngsters, or the purchase of new equipment, for instance. Yeah, we've had tremendous success recently. Cara Hanlon's selection for the Commonwealth Games team, a number of our young footballers getting professional contracts, success of our women footballers particularly. Amy Ringstead from Benbecula, who's been selected for a Scottish age group squad. All of these things haven't happened by accident. It's been the improvement of facilities, talented athletes, and the support and development of clubs that underpin it. So that's the basis of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions alongside Gigi.
Anybody have any questions? Convener.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report, and it's a very small sum out of the, well, probably total budget allocation from the Crown Estate, possibly of 1.7 million. As Tony has said, it's going to benefit every community between the Butter Lewis and Watershay, and I think we should welcome it. I think the last 2 years has shown us that we need more of our community groups, to be working, sports facilities to be available to all these community groups. And I welcome this report, and I thank the officers for taking it forward.
Okay, thanks, Convener. So with that, the leader.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Kenny's kind of said most of what I was wanting to say, but yeah, I'm fully supportive of this. I think getting people back out and active and being able to do it in an equitable way is going to be really beneficial for our community. So I back the recommendation as well. I think Noddy's time again too.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Yeah, further to the convener and the leader, I can only endorse what's already been proposed. Fully supportive of ensuring that our youngsters get every opportunity to participate in sport. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to professional contracts or Commonwealth Games selection. All of that is fantastic. I think we need to celebrate every person that reaches that kind of pinnacle, but participation is the important thing here. At a young level, and hopefully they can keep it on going forward for a healthier population. And I think the work that Gigi and Tony are doing is fantastic, and I recommend absolutely anything to do with the furtherance of sport in the Western Isles, and anything we can do to support it, underpin it, and make sure everybody benefits from it. So yeah, I'm fully supportive of this.
So thanks. So do members agree recommendation 3.1? Thank you. Right, next item, item 18, Library and Information Service Update and Review. Script sheet. This report provides a progress update in relation to the Library and Information Service and requests approval for a review and restructure of the service. Kathleen Milne is available to speak to the report, and Kathleen is Library and Information Service Manager.
Hello, Chair. Thank you. Just to say, this report just gives a sort of update for the service and is looking to review the staffing. The pandemic has highlighted the vital role libraries play in supporting communities and connecting them to information, digital resources and reading materials, as well as cultural activities and events. However, the service has been in a fragile state for many years. The library plan in 2015 highlighted challenges to do with low staffing levels and the lack of a robust structure and professional support. So a review was undertaken in 2018, but at that point it was deferred, and the service has been in somewhat of a limbo ever since. So this report asks committee to consider that we undertake a further staffing review to ensure the long-term sustainability of the service, and also proposes the possibility that a short-term working group might be established to facilitate the process and also look at potentials the service has in supporting mental health and well-being and communities in general. In addition, we'd also like to pilot an alternative timetable for the 3 branch libraries. Now that's Tarbert, Castle Bay and Linnaclet, because they offer a combined service to the schools and the public. So what we're hoping to pilot is reduce the access for the public just sort of slightly, but allow for dedicated school access at that time, which will make it a lot easier for the staff to provide a more meaningful service to the schools and sort of avoid them being stressed between 2 different sort of audiences at the same time. We hope to pilot that for about 6 months, and then we'll consult with the public and provide feedback on how we continue that. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, so do members... Oh, Francis. Okay. Thank you.
That's it. I'm very, very supportive of anything to do with libraries. I think it's really imperative for communities and for schools that they are served by libraries, and very supportive of the idea of a working group to have a look at this. Would be very happy to be involved in that. I can only point to my own involvement in school libraries, where we have seen in the last, since we've returned from the pandemic, how critical a library service is as a support to young people, as well as somewhere where they're encouraged to read. And I can't think of any better combination.
Thanks, Francis. Councillor Ray Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree actually with everything that Francis said there. And I think a working group is essential, because the situation with the employees in the library service is absolutely critical. It's past critical, in fact. It's the equivalent of about 700 people leaving the council, or 1,400, whatever. You know, we're down to the bare minimum, and they're not able to carry out the work. And it's a vital service. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I just want to go back to Kathleen. Kathleen, did you want, on this working group, did you want any councillor input at all? Or is it primarily going to be officers?
I think having council membership would be really worthwhile.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yep.
Just to clarify, if we are appointing another member officer working group, the number of members is of each member officer working group. It is determined by the committee. The chair and vice chair are ex officio members, and if the committee is looking to appoint other members to the mic.
Yeah, I would say, can I propose Councillor Francis Murray?
Can I second that?
Councillor Norm MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of what Kathleen and Francis have already said. I think our libraries should be broadening what it is they offer, and as much of the facilities that they can provide out into the wider communities and support services to all children and adults. I think we've broadly been very supportive of libraries within the corner, but it needs to translate into something more concrete. And I'm happy to see that we're bringing together a MOUG so that we can actually flesh out what it is we expect from our libraries and what our libraries expect us to support them to do. And I think it's very important that we go further forward with what it is we do. And the same as, it's a very strange probably analogy, but I think what eSchool did in COVID, our libraries can be doing generally all the time in our communities. You know, we underestimate the power of what it is to reach out to people and offer them a library service with all the ancillary bits and pieces we can tag on to it. I think it's fantastic that we are looking to do something more positive with our libraries. I think it's a hugely important service, and one we underestimate its potential at our peril. And I'm fully supportive of everything that it is that they do, and hope we offer them more power to do more things.
Okay, thanks, Norrie. So do members agree the recommendation 3.1 with the addition of the? Well, does anyone else? Yeah, I didn't see anybody else putting their hands up, so I didn't think there was anyone. I think there's enough there. I mean, 3 of us is enough on top of the existing working group. It's not too many.
Officers will be appointed by the
director. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to item 19, which is governance. So this Educational Resource Subcommittee appointment of members. This report seeks the appointment of 5 members to the Educational Resource Subcommittee. The chair and vice chair, oh man, are ex officio members of the subcommittee. The committee is limited to, is invited to appoint 5 other members to the subcommittee. I will now call for nominations and seconders, please, for these for these appointments. Don't all rush. It's all right. So, can I have some nominations, please? Suppose. Right. So can I nominate Councillor Leader, please? Seconder. Anybody else? Convener? Do we have a seconder? Everybody. Who isn't here? Another 3. Dinner's better, lunch is beckoning. I mean, basically what it deals with is appeals, so schools transport, things like this. And meets very, very infrequently, very infrequently. It's not a burden at all. Councillor Susan Thompson, are you moved? Yep. Hmm?
Councillor Colin McLean.
Yep. I think it was once or twice, yeah. I don't think it was more than twice anyway. We just need one more.
Sorry, was I nominated? I didn't quite hear that.
Yeah.
I heard something McLean.
You're hardly on any committees, Kenny.
Yeah, that's what you heard. A loud seconder. Right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Right. So we'll move on. Is that it? We'll move on to service improvement, item 20. Local government benchmarking framework 2020-2021. This report provides an update on performance in local government benchmarking framework indicators relevant to education, skills and children's services and sets out performance against improvement targets. Neil MacLeod is available to speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, the appendix actually sets out all the different indicators underneath the local government benchmarking framework and shows you a RAG system of those that in relation to the performance as a trend. And also within the report, we've picked up on the areas for focused improvement activity that was agreed last year in June. These provide an overview of the activities throughout the year, and these are normally reported on in our performance report or performance updates, and we would continue to do that over the coming year. One thing to bear in mind that although it talks about 2020-21, it actually refers, especially for educational indicators, to results up to the end of the school year, which would come into our 21-22 financial year. But happy to answer any questions on the report.
So do members have any questions? So agree the recommendation at 3-1. Thank you. Performance monitoring reports outstanding is item 2021. Nobody's anything. Item 2022 CLD partnership plan 2020 to 2024 update. This is an urgent report providing an update on the Community Learning and Development Partnership Plan 2021 to 24. Fiona McInnes-Beggs is available to speak to the report. Fiona, is she? Yep. Okay. Thanks, Fiona.
I'm glad I'm number 22 on the agenda. It means I get plenty time. Good afternoon, folks. So the purpose of this report is it's got a dual purpose today. To give an update on the plan that I took to committee last September, which detailed the strategic plan for CLD and partners going forward to 2024. And also I'm required to do a progress report for HMIE, so this will serve both purposes. Basically, in the body of the report, it talks about the two areas that we were asked to look at when our colleagues from HMIE were here at the end of last year. And it talks about some of the progress that we've made under the two headings, governance and joint targets and performance measures. We hope to be able to provide a positive report to our HMIE colleagues in July this year. And other than that, it's just to note the content, and I'm happy to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, sorry, you have to wait. Cam is in ahead of your eyes. I know. Tell me about it. Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Again, not a member of your committee, but I would welcome the CLD input that we have had in the community of Kinloch and North Lochs in the past while. The work that the development worker from CLD has done for us has been immense, and that's been recognised by both all organisations that she has been involved with and all community groups. And I would hope that we could continue this going forward, because it has certainly benefited the communities. And I'm speaking on behalf of all community groups and both members here from the ward as well. So I would hope that we could maintain the CLD work that we do have and maintain it possibly on a full-time basis. I know that we are in a changeover at the moment of where CLD lies in departments, but I would hope that we would be able to come to a resolution of this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, okay, I'll just second that. Yeah, I mean, in Harris, the amount of work that the CLD office has done is tremendous. So yes, we certainly would try and do that. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thanks for that report. I noticed that the CLD, Community Learning and Development, is also mentioned in the Muir report, and he actually highlights the work that's going on there within Scotland, and so that's something good that we've got in. I have to go to my own area, and we haven't had you yourself have had, but we haven't had a CLD officer there for a number of years. Is there any move that we can get to appoint a CLD officer? I know you take over, but it's part of you. It's not your remit as such. Whereas Lochs, I heard, I got a 50%. Yeah, for a little area like that, you know, to go to a 50%, and a huge area that I'm in, and we haven't got nothing. So there seems to be a disconnect somewhere.
Obviously, there was an apprentice post in covering Backtongue and Tolsta, and unfortunately we can't keep them if they don't want to stay, and so it's all down to resources, and we don't have resources at the moment to provide the support that we would like to provide in Tungback and Tolsta. However, I try and make sure that any opportunities that are provided in other communities are shared with Backtongue and Tolsta through the communication flow via myself.
That's not fair. That's not fair. Chair, that is not fair. That the likes of Lochs get a 0.5 and we do not get anything. So I'm lodging my, how can I put it, my dissent.
Yeah,
discontent. Discontent,
yes,
is a word for it. Because I do realise that when we had the apprentice, she was excellent. Yeah. She had made an impact on it, and then when it goes, then we suffer. So
there are 4 ward areas that don't have direct CLD support across the Western Isles, and I think probably from my perspective, in terms of being the manager of the section, we have to try and look at external monies, because there are no internal monies available at this point in time to provide any additional. And maybe it's about building capacity within communities, helping communities to try and think about other ways to access the supports that they need. And I think probably through the Crown Estate process, we're seeing groups that we wouldn't always see coming to the fore and recognising that they have got a significant contribution to make in terms of improvements in their communities. So I'm as frustrated as you are, and are trying to do what I can with the resource that I have.
In view of the fact that it's been mentioned in the Muir report, in view of the fact that he actually highlights the work of the CLD, the positive impact they have, then I think that if we're going to quote Muir reports, we should be quoting it for CLD as well. So
okay. Well, we can look at that. We'll look at it and discuss it. Malcolm, do you want to come in at all?
Chair, very briefly, the point that Mrs. McInnes-Begg makes is an important one, and one of the points of the review was to try and provide cohesive community support across the Western Isles, but it recognises a point she made, that part of that is building up community capacity that's there already, that's there from other sources. Some communities are richer than others in terms of development workers and development officers, but no area should be left bereft, as it were, of support. And of course, particularly as we develop the area fora, formal or informal, these need to be supported through, amongst others, CLD staff. And that was a big point of the review, to provide that consistent level of support using the Crown Estate funding where that's helpful and where that's required. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Right, with that then, so do members agree to note the report? Okay, thanks. Right, so we're going to move into private now to consider items 6, 16 and 20.